Chapter 537. Almost every teacher in charge couldn't escape the fate of being slandered and ridiculed by their students. Old Pan, who had been teaching at number 60 high for many years, was certainly no exception. In terms of teaching ability, there were actually many teachers who were better than Old Pan. But as a teacher in charge, teaching ability actually didn't mean everything. Why had Old Pan been named number 60 high's gold medal teacher and teaching pioneer? Headmaster Chen wasn't a fool, because he knew that as a teacher in charge, teaching ability alone was useless. High school was a period of confusion and chiyuni. Many students would liberate their natural instincts at this stage, or in layman's terms, they would be rebellious. If they didn't receive the right spiritual guidance at this stage, it would in fact have a huge impact on their lives later on. What rebellious children needed was care as well as proper guidance on the three views, which was what Headmaster Chen emphasized at the school assembly every year. So while teaching ability was very important, it wasn't the key criterion for grading the teacher in charge of each class every year. As long as they could pass the city-level qualification assessment every year, that was enough. However, there were always some students who weren't satisfied with Old Pan among the previous graduates. After Old Pan had sent off a batch of students, someone had left an anonymous comment online, saying that Old Pan and the headmaster of the school had made a deal behind the scenes. Actually, there were these comments every year, but they were very few and could almost be ignored. However, as Old Pan had been teaching at number 60 high for a long time, the number of these posts had become significant. Under normal circumstances, a new student's favorite thing to do was to search the internet for news about the school or the teachers. There were many posts about Old Pan being defamed on the internet, and the things mentioned in the posts seemed to be true. Thus, many people didn't have a particularly good impression of Old Pan at the beginning of the semester, and felt that she was a particularly rigid and unreasonable person. But after the Shuego sect incident, everyone's impression of Old Pan had changed a lot. Now, many people realized that Old Pan was actually a very easygoing person who didn't care about the rumors online at all. Actually, when they thought about it carefully, the people who had slandered Old Pan online had all been anonymous, which only showed that their descriptions of the matter were a little unreliable. If the matter was completely true, and they hated Old Pan to the bone, wouldn't it be better to report her with her real name? But in fact, after teaching for so many years, Old Pan had seen more students than she had eaten. In fact, she had long since stopped caring about it. Because it was midterm exams, Old Pan miraculously did not call for her parents this time. She only gave a verbal warning. Then, he took away their phones, stipulating that they would only be able to redeem them if they got into the top 5 in the class, in terms of total scores this time. On one hand, Old Pan was worried that calling their parents would affect their mentality for the exam. On the other hand, this was also one of Old Pan's teaching techniques. She was used to calling their parents during tastings, but one day, she suddenly stopped instead. It made people feel as if Old Pan had found her conscience. Furthermore, he didn't think the requirement to be in the top 5 was too high. After all, there were only 15 people in the class. Most importantly, the gap between the first and last place in grade 1, class 3 was not too big. Everyone was an elite, and the top students did not compete on their grades, but on who could make fewer mistakes during the exam. During the afternoon self-study session, Teacher Yi Han, who taught PE, specially came to the class to look for Wang Ling. Actually, during the morning self-study session, Wang Ling had already noticed Teacher Ye's figure swaying at the classroom door, but he hadn't dared come in at that time, because Teacher Pan's aura was too strong, like a Buddha standing guard in front of the dais, which made Teacher Yi feel uneasy. Wang Ling could roughly guess why Teacher Yi had come. He guessed that there was an 80% chance that something had happened at the district sports meet. This time, Wang Ling was taking part in 3 events: the relay race, the medicine ball race, and the Battle of Soul Pets. Although the Battle of Soul Pets was also part of the district sports meet, it was actually just an entertainment event for the sake of good luck. At the door of the classroom, Teacher Yi was holding a timetable, which had just been finalized by the district, which detailed the dates of each major competition event. However, there were two events on the timetable that conflicted with each other. The Medicine Ball event and the Battle of Soul Pets event were arranged together. Number 60 High Spirit Beast participating this time was already confirmed to be Loopy Toad, and there was no way it could be changed midway. However, Wang Ling still had to participate in the Medicine Ball event, so Teacher Yi felt a little headache coming on. That's the situation. Student Wang Ling. I'm here this time to ask Student Wang Ling if you know any friends who can take your place in the Battle of Soul Pets event. The score for the Battle of Soul Pets event was very low, and there was no way Teacher Yi would ask Wang Ling to give up the higher-scoring Medicine Ball event for this event. So at this time, the only way was to find someone to take Wang Ling's place and direct Loopy Toad in the battle without affecting the flow of the major competition, so that they could get points for both events. This was a unified process arranged by the district, and there basically wouldn't be any conflicts between the major competitions. In fact, the main reason was that number 60 High didn't have a lot of contestants. A lot of contestants like Ling Junren were competing in more than one event and couldn't adjust at all. Number 60 High was still in the process of being promoted from an ordinary high school to a key high school in Songhai City, so the ranking in the district sports meet this time was very important. During the afternoon self-study period, Old Pan was relatively lax. Since they had already finished 2 exams that morning, the students were usually free to do whatever they wanted at noon. Everyone in class had clearly heard what Teacher Yi had said to Wang Ling at the door. Hearing that it was because of the time conflict, Dopey Guo was overjoyed and rushed out of the classroom. Teacher, I can find someone to take Wang Ling's place in the Battle of Soul Pets. Can you do it? Teacher Yi gave Dopey Guo a look. Super Chen slowly walked out of the classroom and echoed, Teacher Yi, you don't understand the situation at all. Dopey Guo might really be able to do it. Who in class didn't know that Dopey Guo had uncles all over the world? Dopey Guo. I have a little uncle who's actually only a few years older than me. He's a pet trainer. He's amazing. Teacher Yi broke out in a sweat. Pet trainer? You'll have to pay. We don't have enough funds, so it's best if we join as friends. We can't afford it. Dopey Guo. No need for money. That person's surname is Wei, and Loopy Toad also knows him. I heard that they get along pretty well. Wang Ling knew that Dopey Guo was recommending Wei Ji at that moment. Actually, even if Dopey Guo hadn't said it, the first person Wang Ling had thought of was Wei Ji. Teacher Yi scared. Isn't your surname Guo? Why is your uncle's surname Wei? Dopey Guo was startled. Who told you that an uncle has to be a real uncle? My uncles have hundreds of surnames. They have all kinds of surnames. Chapter 538. The participant list for the Battle of Soul Pets had to be confirmed as soon as possible, so after hearing Dopey Guo's recommendation, Teacher Yi straightaway took out his phone and had Dopey Guo call his little uncle Wei Ji to confirm it in person. There was no problem with Wang Ling. As long as Wei Ji agreed, this matter would basically be settled. After Dopey Guo and Wei Ji picked up the call, Dopey Guo gave a brief summary of the whole situation, and Wei Ji directly roared in excitement. Damn! Really? Teacher Yi and Wang Ling could hear Wei Ji's excited roar over the phone. Let me do it. Teacher Yi took the phone from Dopey Guo with a smile. Is this Mr. Wei? I'm student Guo's PE teacher. My surname is Yi. Wei Ji smiled very happily. I just heard from Dopey Guo. If Teacher Yi is looking for me, you've definitely found the right person. Teacher Yi nodded. Are you really a pet trainer? Wei Ji hummed in acknowledgement. That's right, I'm really a pet trainer. Actually, there was one thing Teacher Yi hadn't said before the call. Although there were very few points for the Battle of Soul Pets this time, these points often became the key to deciding the overall situation. Every school might seem careless, but in fact they were holding back. Reliance High School, for example, had received news from Teacher Yi in the office earlier that they had found an S-level pet trainer to replace Aluminum Tree, the owner of the Land Shark, Aluminum Small Fish, in the battle. So if Wei Ji was a professional pet trainer, Teacher Yi felt that his chances of winning this match would be much higher than if Wang Ling were to personally take command. Teacher Yi asked softly, "May I ask, what is Mr. Wei's professional level?" Wei Ji was blank. "Is there a limit?" Teacher Yi quickly shook his head. No. There is no limit. But the list of substitutes for the competition needs to be accurately reported. If Mr. Wei Ji confirms that he wants to participate, you'll have to make copies of your ID card and professional certificate for me. Wei Ji nodded. "No problem, Teacher Yi. But my level is actually average. There are a lot of people who are better than me when it comes to professional players." As soon as Wei Ji said this, Wang Ling and Dopigua immediately knew that this guy was being modest again. Wei Ji's family used to work in the army, but they had been pet trainers since his grandfather's generation. They could be considered a family of pet trainers, so how bad could they be? Furthermore, Wei Ji had signed contracts with more than a dozen spirit beasts of all sizes. This really wasn't a number that an ordinary pet trainer could sign. These humble words made Teacher Yi smile. Of course, he didn't expect a random student from the school to have a strong professional standard. However, if he could get an A, that would be good enough. Thinking of this, Teacher Yi tried to be as tactful as possible and asked, "Mr. Wei Ji, is there a B level?" He purposely lowered his voice to avoid awkwardness. "B class?" Wei Ji smiled. "I'm an SSR. Teacher Ye's eyes widened in shock. SSR? Wasn't this only second to the master level? Professional pet trainer master. Teacher Yi remembered that there were no more than 10 people in the country who had obtained the highest professional certification. But there weren't many SSR-level professional pet trainers either. There were no more than 50 of them in the country at the moment. Teacher Yi was stunned. "Mr. Wei Ji, you're a little amazing." Actually, an S-level could already be considered an expert among pet trainers, and an SSR could already be said to be completely above the standard. At this level, it wouldn't be a problem for him to become a PhD instructor at a university. Furthermore, the pet trainer professional course had actually been very popular in the last 2 years. There were a lot of students applying for it, but there was a lack of teachers. Most pet trainers at the master level ran their own guilds and wouldn't specifically choose to teach and educate people. Hence, an SSR like Wei Ji was definitely a rare talent that the government was looking for. Wei Ji was very modest. "I was just lucky. Back then, when I took the exam, I just managed to keep my grade down." Teacher Yi, Wang Ling and Dopigua. Keeping his grade down, Wang Ling suddenly felt that this Wei Ji might also be a hidden big shot. In the afternoon, Loopy Toad went out on its own to look for Fatty Luo again, accompanied by Sheep. She had been to Fatty Luo's hardware store for maintenance a few times, and was familiar with the place. The matter of looking for Fatty Luo had been decided last night. When Loopy Toad had been eating broccoli, it had only mentioned the Bone King a little, and by the time it got home, Little Master Ling had already made all the necessary arrangements. According to Fatty Luo, customizing a magic weapon would require a detailed discussion face-to-face, and it would be better to design a tailor-made design. As for the production period, that would depend on the difficulty and requirements. Fatty Luo's hardware store was on Amateus Road, which was said to be the former residence of venerated immortal Amateus. In ancient times, it was said that he was the first person to step into venerated immortal Amateus. However, there was very little written about him in any historical records, even less than about immortal Jinyuan. Although there was a personal profile on the encyclopedia, there was pitifully little concrete information about him. When Sheep brought Loopy Toad in, Fatty Luo was still busy at the counter with his chin in his hands. According to Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, Fatty Luo had already stopped taking orders for the last 2 days, and was now behind closed doors fiddling with his own business. In fact, Fatty Luo didn't lack money to begin with. From what Loopy Toad knew of him, he was a shut-in weaponsmith who treated the magic treasures he refined as figurines. Because Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had told Wang Ling in advance that Loopy Toad was coming, Loopy Toad directly pushed the door open when they arrived at the shop, which was unlatched. Fatty Luo didn't even raise his head as he studied a map with a magnifying glass. After a while he sighed. I'm just short of one more material, And I'll have it all. What material? Sheep climbed directly onto the counter. Fatty Luo glanced at Sheep's little pink dress. The enhanced paint he had applied the last time had indeed been pretty good. Sheep's body was still as bright as before, and she looked even more natural than when he had painted her a few weeks ago. Loopy Toad also jumped up and moved closer to look at the map in Fatty Luo's hands. A map of Devil Valley? Fatty Luo couldn't help asking. You know about it? His heart trembled. When all was said and done, this was Ling Junren's dog. It was quite knowledgeable. Loopy Toad nodded. In fact, it had heard Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal mention this a long time ago. Devil Valley was a secret land that opened once every 100 years, but it was actually more of a ruin than a secret land. There were many rare resources in the Devil Valley ruins that couldn't be found in the current world. In the outside world, a lot of people thought that Devil Valley was a secret land set up by an almighty, but after Little Silver joined the team, everyone had a much clearer idea of Devil Valley. The truth was that this Devil Valley ruins actually had a lot to do with holy beasts. This was because it had been left behind by Devil King, the king of holy beasts back then. It was the king of holy beasts that ruled over all holy beasts. This was information that Little Silver had personally told them, so it couldn't be false. But it was a pity. This king of holy beasts' biggest problem was that he was addicted to sleeping. Furthermore, once he fell asleep, he wouldn't wake up for a short period of time, even if the sky collapsed. Thus, in the end, Devil King couldn't avoid the fate of being stewed. Without a leader, the holy beasts were one of the main reasons why they had gone extinct back then. Chapter 539. Therefore, Devil Valley actually had an unknown nickname, Beast King's Ruins. Little Silver was the only one who knew this nickname before. As early as a month ago, Fatty Luo had already entrusted Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Little Black to monitor the fluctuations in the Devil Valley remains. However, he was only able to capture a slight fluctuation, so he couldn't be completely sure. Like Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had said, if they wanted to enter this Beast King's remains, they would need some lucky chances. Furthermore, once Devil Valley opened, cultivators from all over the world would think of ways to enter the remains, which contained all kinds of extinct resources. Fatty Luo's goal was very clear. He wanted a 1,000 dried bone. Because of this, he had been worrying about it for a whole month. Where did you get this map? Loopy Toad asked. I bought it from a treasure map merchant. Fatty Luo said. There's something you don't know. Ever since Beast King's remains Devil Valley was detected the last time the fluctuations were detected, it has been fermenting. Now all the countries at home and abroad that have the technology to monitor spatial fluctuations are keeping an eye on it. Furthermore, based on historical records of Beast King's remains, the entrance to Devil Valley is only open within Huaxiao Nation's borders. In order to prevent foreign forces from infiltrating, domestic visas have been much stricter recently. Loopy Toad nodded slightly. After all, Beast King's remains contained resources that were already extinct in the present world, so it wasn't surprising that so many people were fighting over them. Actually, I'm afraid of those foreign forces that have illegally entered Devil Valley in order to fight for its resources. The cultivation system of Western cultivators is slightly different from ours. Now that we're in an era of peace and they're thinner, I'm afraid they'll be harder to deal with. Fatty Luo looked at the treasure map and pondered. Loopy Toad pursed its lips. Judging from Fatty Luo's attitude toward this matter, he had already gone all out. Treasure map merchants had always prioritized profit above all else. Fatty Luo had clearly spent a lot of money to obtain this map of Devil Valley. But in fact, this map was not the entire map of Devil Valley. It was only drawn by the map dealer based on the confessions of the cultivators, who had gone to Devil Valley and walked out safely. According to Little Silver, Beast King's remains was very big and full of danger. As the king of beasts, Devil King had put a lot of effort into building Devil Valley back then. This was because the purpose of establishing this Devil Valley was actually to build a Beast King tomb for the Devil King himself. But unfortunately, in the end, Devil King did not end up in the tomb, but in the pot. Once upon a time, I dreamed of making a peerless godly sword like the master of a mortal mansion did. But after seeing Lord Jinka, I realized that it was all for naught. If one day I can personally make a suitable scabbard for Lord Jinka, I can die without regrets. Fatty Luo grit his teeth. The corner of Loopy Toad's eye twitched. Are you exaggerating? Of course not. You don't understand. Designing a scabbard for a divine sword that you love. This is the romance of an armament master. Fatty Luo cupped his face in his hands. When he thought of Jinka, he couldn't help looking like a young girl in love for the first time. Don't you feel like you're putting on silk stockings for the girl you love? Loopy Toad and Sheep. At the mention of Jinka, Fatty Luo appeared very excited. This is the first step in my plan for Lord Jinka. Loopy Toad was blank as it asked. The first step of the plan? Fatty Luo nodded very solemnly. After I design a scabbard for Lord Jinka, I want to show Lord Jinka's heroism to the whole world. So I'm going to invest a huge sum of money into a big movie with Lord Jinka as the theme. The tentative name is The Sword Spirit We Chased Together All Those Years. I even wrote the script a while ago. Loopy Toad. Saying this, spirit light flashed in Fatty Luo's hand as he took out the script and couldn't help acting out the plot on the spot. He would play the male and female leads according to the script. The male lead's name was Jinka, and Fatty Luo hadn't thought of a name for the female lead for the time being. It officially began. Fatty Luo pinched his throat and started acting from the female lead's point of view. How can you be so childish? Then, he instantly switched back to Jinka's point of view. Childish? Female lead. Yes, very childish. Jinka, that's right. I'm childish to chase after such a studious master like you. I'm childish to be able to sign a contract with you for so long. Female lead. Then don't chase me anymore. Jinka turns to leave. Female lead sweated profusely. Idiot. Jinka, that's right. I'm an idiot. Female lead. Big idiot. Jinka. That's why Big Idiot chased you for so long. The performance was over. Fatty Luo took a deep breath. How was it? My performance? After watching Fatty Luo's performance, Loopy Toad and Sheep were completely stupefied. Fatty Luo's performance was too lifelike and shocking. Furthermore, his lines were so simple and crude that they even felt like they were being brainwashed. Fatty Luo's words echoed in Loopy Toad's and Sheep's minds like magic after the performance was over. After a few minutes of silence, Loopy Toad finally couldn't help asking, is this a romance movie? A romance movie? Fatty Luo waved his hand. Who would watch a romance movie now? This is a large-scale fantasy thriller sci-fi bitter Mary Sue movie. Loopy Toad and Sheep were stupefied. After Fatty Luo said this, Loopy Toad felt like its entire body was in trouble. These big plans are still in the preparatory stage. Of course, the most important thing right now is to design a suitable scabbard for Lord Jinka. Fatty Luo put away the script in his hands with a very pleased expression on his face. Don't reveal any spoilers for now. Although I can already tell from the expressions on your faces that my movie will definitely explode at the box office in the future. Loopy Toad sucked in a cold breath of air as it listened. It didn't know if the box office would explode or not, but the people who watched the movie would definitely explode. But given Fatty Luo's innate sense of humor, there was a chance that this movie would really be a hit. By the way, you came to me this time to customize a magic weapon, right? Can you show me the materials? Fatty Luo looked at Loopy Toad as he returned to the topic at hand. Loopy Toad directly spat out the Bone King, and Fatty Luo's eyes instantly lit up. My God, this is the bone of a holy beast. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had actually already explained the specifics to Fatty Luo last night. But when Fatty Luo saw the bone, he couldn't help trembling all over, and even blushing a little. Loopy Toad already didn't have the energy to ridicule Fatty Luo's orgasmic face. It was really an eyesore. Loopy Toad. Didn't you already know last night? How can hearing it and seeing it with my own eyes be the same? Fatty Luo clicked his tongue. An excellent artificer will only respond to two things. One is a first-rate magic weapon, and the other is high-quality raw materials. There aren't many magic weapons and raw materials that can make my face flush. Suddenly Loopy Toad asked, Then what about Jinka? The moment it asked this question, Loopy Toad actually already regretted it. Fatty Luo stared at Loopy Toad and smiled slightly before he whispered in its ear. To tell you the truth, brother dog, I got hard at that time. Chapter 540. Fatty Luo spent about 5 minutes inspecting the bone in his hand inside out. This is a holy beast's bone. The surface of the bone is smooth, and it's been preserved very well. He couldn't help sniffing it. And I don't know why, but I seem to smell a hint of wildness on it. It's been so long, but there's still the smell of a dog on it. Loopy Toad. Before I got this bone, a Finra hugged it and licked it every day. Cough cough. Fatty Luo looked a little embarrassed as he stared at Loopy Toad and asked, Brother dog, what do you think about custom-made magic treasures? The most important thing is that it's easy to use. Also, this is Dog Saint's bone, so it's best if it's representative when you design it. It would be best if it could be multifunctional. Loopy Toad replied, Alright, I have a rough idea. Fatty Luo stroked the bone and waved his hand with a smile. You can pick it up the day after tomorrow. I just had a super awesome idea. I guarantee you'll be satisfied. The day after tomorrow? So soon? This speed was a little beyond Loopy Toad's understanding. As technology advanced nowadays, it was already possible to combine relevant calculations when refining magic treasures to greatly increase the success rate and reduce the refining time. However, in order to refine a holy beast bone into a magic treasure in less than 3 days, it would be extremely difficult. Admittedly, Fatty Luo's skills were acknowledged in the circle as good, but this speed was a little exaggerated. Nowadays, all the more advanced refining shops have time rooms for refining weapons, but they can't be used inside, so you can only put the raw materials inside and control them from outside. Brother dog, you're pretty lucky. I just installed one here last month, and it's really expensive. Fatty Luo sked. Loopy Toad calculated the time. If it could get the item the day after tomorrow, it would actually be just in time for the school's district sports meet. Loopy Toad and Sheep didn't stay at Fatty Luo's place for too long. After handing the Bone King to Fatty Luo, Sheep took Loopy Toad back home. Of course, Fatty Luo hadn't done it for nothing. Logically speaking, given Fatty Luo's refining skills, he would be paid a lot for a custom-made magic treasure. After his initial communication with Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal last night, Fatty Luo didn't ask for the refining fee, but hoped that after the custom-made magic treasure was successfully refined, Ling Jinren would agree to a reasonable request. Wang Ling had already agreed to this. Of course, Loopy Toad guessed that Fatty Luo's request was most likely related to Jinka. This person's obsession with Jinka was too deep. By the time Loopy Toad and Sheep returned home, it was already evening, which just so happened to be when Wang Ling had finished school. The first thing Loopy Toad did when it got home was to continue studying its 7 basic dog skills. Apart from the first and second forms, which were level 4, the rest were all level 5 dog skills, which were a little difficult to understand. But Loopy Toad wasn't in a hurry. It planned to learn the first and second forms first. It had been studying the first and second forms in its free time these days, and had actually already pretty much figured them out. Holding the small white lace umbrella that Wang Ling had given her before, Sheep sat on the stone steps in front of the door and watched Loopy Toad box. This scene looked a little miraculous. It was clearly a dog that hadn't transformed, but could walk upright like a human, and also box like a human. Loopy Toad disassembled the first and second forms, and all the dog skills flowed through its mind. After trying them out 2 or 3 times, Loopy Toad's movements gradually became coherent, and it began to move smoothly from the opening stance to the rest of the dog skills. The essence of the basic dog skills was fast, accurate, and ruthless. They were actually very simple movements that didn't look fancy at all. But back then, Dog Saint had relied on this move to beat up all the leaders of the Holy Dog Clan. This move actually had another name, dog beating skills. The speed at which the 7 forms of the dog skills were unleashed was progressively faster. The first form required 81 punches in 1 second to be considered initiated, and the second form required 162 punches. According to Little Silver, Dog Saint's seventh form back then had directly punched out 5,184 times. If you cultivated the 7 forms of the basic dog skills to the peak and used all 7 forms, you would ultimately be able to throw over 10,000 powerful punches in 1 second. I'll hit. In the back garden, Loopy Toad was wearing a yellow tight-fitting exercise suit as it waved its fist swiftly. Mother Wong had recently made this exercise suit for Loopy Toad. Although the Wong family's small villa was usually a little remote and rarely visited, considering that sheep would sometimes be sunbathing in the garden, Mother Wong had still made Loopy Toad a small suit. As a male Akita, and an intelligent Akita at that, it was unsightly for him to swing his lower body around in front of a little girl while he was practicing martial arts. Loopy Toad thanked Mother Wong from the bottom of its heart. In fact, it usually chose to cultivate when sheep wasn't around. Fortunately, Mother Wong had made it a suit. Otherwise it would have been a little shameful if sheep just stared at it while it was cultivating today. Holding the small umbrella, Sheep watched in boredom. "Do you want me to help?" she suddenly asked. Loopy Toad looked at Sheep. Sure. To be honest, Loopy Toad felt that its current strength wasn't on the same level as Sheep's. After all, Sheep had been directly enlightened by Little Master Ling, and she had mastered one of the 3,000 great spells, the Great Rapid Movement spell, which gave her extremely high speed and evasion. If Sheep got serious, Loopy Toad wouldn't be able to hit her with these 2 dog skills. But when practicing the dog skills, it was of course best if there was a target for actual combat. Cultivating hard would only create all kinds of obstacles when it was time to put it into practice. Holding the small umbrella, Sheep stood in front of Loopy Toad. "Oh, for the sake of fairness, I won't use the Heavenly Tao. If you can touch me, it'll be very amazing." "I'll do my best." Loopy Toad took a deep breath. To be honest, even if Sheep didn't use the Heavenly Tao, Loopy Toad felt that it would already be amazing if it could touch her. But if it didn't use the Heavenly Tao, its chances of doing so would undoubtedly be much higher. At that moment, Loopy Toad stood in front of Sheep and took a deep breath. Spirit energy slowly coalesced in its body and gradually flowed to its front and back paws. Looking ahead, it closed its eyes slightly and focused its mind. At the same time, it silently recited the incantation of the basic dog skills. Dog strength and dog family live and die. The basic dog skills are invincible. The first fist of the starting stance. Chapter 541. This punch was extraordinarily powerful, and Loopy Toad felt as if its paw was accumulating explosive power. So-called practice and actual combat were 2 completely different things. This was a feeling it had never experienced during practice. Loopy Toad felt its body heat up as it punched out with the first punch. Although its paw was very small, the power of this punch was already no less than a punch from a soul formation cultivator. Logically speaking, it was impossible for a second-class spirit beast to exert the power of a soul formation cultivator. But Loopy Toad's body still had the incomplete Great Sword Tao spell. Although it had only accepted 40% of the power of Sword Tao so far, the strengthening effect on its strength was already very obvious. Especially when it got serious, the power of Sword Tao was already invisibly strengthening the basic dog skills. Not only did this punch have the super high attack speed of the basic dog skills, it was also mixed with the sharpness of the power of Sword Tao. This sharpness caused the power of Loopy Toad's dog skills to increase exponentially. Sheep was also a little astonished. She had never expected Loopy Toad's punch to be so powerful. Wild gusts of air blew against Sheep's cheeks, causing her bun head to bounce along with the turbulence. But this kind of attack speed was still far from enough for Sheep. Holding the small umbrella, her little body swayed as if she were dancing in the garden. Too slow. Holding the umbrella, Sheep easily evaded the attacks. In 1 second, Loopy Toad's 81 punches of the first form didn't touch Sheep at all. Loopy Toad's eyes followed Sheep's movements as it attacked at such a fast speed. This definitely wasn't her dodging at full speed. But even so, Loopy Toad could only see a faint shadow. This speed was really too fast. But Loopy Toad was well aware that it couldn't catch it at all with its current eyesight. After a while, Loopy Toad stopped attacking, and instead stared at Sheep as it pondered what to do. Holding the small umbrella, Sheep narrowed her eyes and smiled as she explained, "My current speed corresponds to the maximum speed you can display at your current level. Really too abnormal." Loopy Toad couldn't help muttering in its heart. It had never expected that the extreme speed of a second-stage beast could be so dazzling. Loopy Toad felt that it needed to find its own style of attack. However, judging from the current situation, it was obvious that it was not a speed-type player. Every spirit beast's characteristics were different, and they all had their own unique advantages based on their breed and grade. But Loopy Toad's current state was even more special. It had been formed after its soul and body had been reunited. When he was still a toad, his specialty was defense and control. He was a standard fatten type of character. But now his soul had been integrated into an Akita. The key was that Akita was not a spirit dog. If his soul hadn't been that of a Demon King, and Little Master Ling had improved the Demon King Heart Sutra, he wouldn't have been able to cultivate it at all. Akita Inu. This breed, Loopy Toad really couldn't think of any other advantages apart from using it as an emoji pack to act cute. However, judging from the degree of familiarity between his soul and physical body, he still had to wait. That was because his previous narcolepsy hadn't been completely eliminated. After bathing in the first holy beast blood provided by Little Silver, the symptoms of narcolepsy had only lessened a lot. As long as this narcolepsy persisted, it was proof that the soul and physical body weren't completely compatible yet. In a little over a month or two at most, Loopy Toad would be able to completely adapt to this body. In fact, it was only after it had completely accepted this body that it would be able to study its specific advantages. Looks like I'll have to think about it carefully in the future. Loopy Toad pondered deeply. Although it hadn't even touched Sheep's body just now, this actual combat had been a great inspiration for Loopy Toad. Loopy Toad was currently still at the stage of adapting and researching the development and application of this body. Apart from the tongue technique and the space swallowing spell, which were two minor spells that could be used normally even with spirit energy, Loopy Toad had already completely discarded all the other spells of the Toad clan. Since it had chosen to live in the modern human world of cultivators, it had chosen to live with Little Master Ling. At this stage, Loopy Toad's small goal for itself was to work hard to adapt to its new life and become a dog that Little Master Ling wouldn't bring out to embarrass himself. After it finished cultivating, Loopy Toad ran to the backyard and took off its yellow exercise clothes and put them in a bamboo basket. This was what Mother Wong had prepared for Loopy Toad. It had to be washed promptly after each cultivation session. The Toad clan was originally lazy and didn't bother about trifles. Sometimes, after falling asleep, they might not shower for several years. But after Loopy Toad had turned into a dog and followed Wong Ling, it realized that it loved cleanliness more. Loopy Toad felt that it had been deeply influenced by Little Master Ling when it came to this love of cleanliness. Little Master Ling's bedroom was spotless every day, and Mother Wong almost didn't need to clean it. Especially recently, because Loopy Toad had shed a little due to its diligent cultivation, Little Master Ling cleaned it even more diligently than before. When Loopy Toad entered the bedroom, it could even smell a fragrant scent. Loopy Toad felt that for a boy's bedroom, Wong Ling was really too clean. In contrast, Wei Ji's house was actually very casual. Loopy Toad had gone to take a look. In addition to the eco-house that had been built for pushing large butterfly, Wei Ji's own bedroom was piled with a lot of junk, from Spirit Beast magazines to snacks to all kinds of daily necessities, which were all casually piled on the table. For Little Master Ling, these were all forbidden areas. Admittedly, this had to do with personal habits. Wei Ji had to wake up early and work late every day to take care of so many contracted spirit beasts, so he actually didn't have the time to tidy up at all. Like Spirit Beast, Loopy Toad now felt that this was true at all. Loopy Toad's deepest impression was that all the books and test papers around Little Master Ling, as long as they were made of paper, the corners were always flat. If they were bent even the slightest bit, Little Master Ling wouldn't hesitate to use the power of Heavenly Tao to break them down. and then reassemble them. After putting the exercise clothes into the bamboo basket, Loopy Toad turned on the faucet in the back garden to wash itself. As it shook off the water, it circulated its spirit energy to quickly heat up its body, and in less than 10 seconds, it was dry. Through the glass door in the back garden, Loopy Toad saw Father Wong and Lai Ming Ming on the sofa watching a TV show, and they looked very nervous. Loopy Toad suddenly remembered that today was July 17th. It was also the day of the month's double monthly votes battle on Father Wong's novel Cultivation Chinese Network. It would run from the 15th to the 17th, and today was the last day of the double monthly votes. This TV show was a ballot counting program that Cultivation Chinese Network was connected to a TV station. Currently, the author in first place on the monthly votes list, Braised Pork Shoulder, monthly votes, 980120. Second place on the monthly votes list, Braised Pig Feet in Sauce, monthly votes, 965772. Father Wong's pen name, Wong Situ, was third. Monthly votes, 462333. Chapter 542. It's actually only third place? To be honest, Lai Ming Ming was very surprised by this result. Although Father Wong's new book had only been out for less than 2 months, the readers on the website were satisfied with it at 87%, which was a very high figure. Furthermore, a major feature of Father Wong's novels was that readers were very loyal. Based on this, Father Wong's chapters had an average of 300,000 subscriptions. This was an astonishing figure. The most important thing was that this 300,000 was just the number of subscriptions on Cultivation Chinese Network. Father Wong also had a considerable number of subscriptions on more than 40 other novel partner platforms. Of course, Father Wong couldn't see these subscriptions on his back end, but Lai Ming Ming would take a look every month. Currently, subscriptions on all of Father Wong's channels were about to break 1 million. Of course, the success of Father Wong's last book, Let Go of That Wet Nurse, was a big factor in his astonishing sales. Even so, the number of votes in this month's battle for double monthly votes had reached an unprecedented and frightening level. The monthly votes of the first and second place authors were almost the same, and they were about to break 1 million. This month's monthly votes were a little exaggerated. Brother Wong, what should we do? Lai Ming Ming was a little anxious. How about you break out? Beg for monthly votes? Break out. Father Wong raised an eyebrow. Didn't I just break out yesterday? It's impossible for me to break out in the near future. Absolutely impossible. If I break out, I'll lose a few years of my life. The gains don't make up for the losses. You want me to break out? I'd rather dress in women's clothing for monthly votes, okay? I can wear black stockings, but only if I don't show my face. I want my face. Lai Ming Ming was stunned. To think that Father Wong could come up with such a shameless plan. This was already quite shameless. Brother, don't. It's too hard on the eyes if you dress in women's clothing, Lai Ming Ming said. Besides, even if you don't show your face and wear black stockings, you still have to shave your legs, which is very troublesome. Also, it's actually not very good for men to shave their legs. The eel department had organized a trip to the hot spring before, and both Father Wong and Lai Ming Ming had gone. While soaking in the hot spring, Lai Ming Ming had seen Father Wong's thick leg hair. If he had to describe it, Lai Ming Ming felt that if he shaved off all Father Wong's leg hair, he could fry a pot of chives. No matter what, brother, I think this ticket is abnormal. Hugging a pillow, Lai Ming Ming sat on the sofa and defended Father Wong. Father Wong silently lit a cigarette and was very calm. What's so unusual about it? It was very normal for people to be willing to spend money on their favorite authors. Moreover, Braised Pork Shoulder and Braised Pig Feet in Soy Sauce were also veteran authors on the website, right? It's not like you don't know that rich readers can increase their monthly votes just by sending red packets. Lai Ming Ming sighed. This was actually his negligence. He should have realized it earlier. Lai Ming Ming had initially thought that, given Father Wong's current position as number 1 in all the major lists, his position as number 1 in the overall monthly votes this month should be a given, so he hadn't paid much attention to him. In the end, Today was the last day of the double monthly votes event. Lai Mingming was completely dumbfounded when he saw the number of votes publicly displayed on TV. As of midnight today, there were still 6 hours left for the double monthly votes. To be honest, Lai Mingming felt that it was really too difficult to close the gap of nearly 500,000 monthly votes in these 6 hours. But if he didn't seize this opportunity to double the monthly votes, it would be even more difficult to overtake Father Wang after the event was over. Lai Mingming looked at the book review sections for the 2 authors at the top of the monthly votes list. Sure enough, because there wasn't much of a difference in the number of votes between them, the fans of both sides had already launched a series of canvassing campaigns in the book review sections for the authors they supported. The battle for the monthly votes was actually a way to boost the morale of fans. Furthermore, Cultivation Chinese Network had now withdrawn the fan nameplate campaign. As long as you supported an author, you would hang that author's nameplate next to your ID. If the author's monthly votes site won, the fans who supported the author would definitely be full of glory. But once the battle for the monthly votes entered a white-hot stage, it was inevitable that a war of words would break out between fans who supported different authors. Although Lai Mingming hadn't been employed for long, and it had only been a few years, he had gained a lot of experience over the last few years. As a veteran who had entered the industry even earlier than Lai Mingming, Father Wang looked like he was already used to all kinds of storms. He didn't even need to look at the book review section to know what was going on. Have the fans of both sides already started fighting each other? Lai Mingming. It seems like it's pretty big. A fan of braised pork shoulders leader entered the fan group of braised pig feet in sauce's leader, and because of some conflict, kicked out pig feet's leader's fan group. Both sides are now fighting over this matter. Father Wang sked. The authors on both sides haven't said anything yet, have they? Lai Mingming shook his head. Not yet, but there are more and more onlookers. It's not just our site where the fans of both sides are fighting. Everyone in other literary forums knows about it, and is talking about it. That's right. Father Wang nodded. Who was the happiest when fans fought? Of course it was the authors. This move, which looked like a quarrel, was in fact a happy and harmonious method of canvassing for votes. In Father Wang's view, it was actually quite brilliant. In this way, not only did it stimulate the reader's desire to canvass for votes for the authors they supported, it also attracted a large number of onlookers to gather around and read the books. Subscriptions rose, new fans emerged, and Father Wang also received a lot of tips. Father Wang stared at the tally of votes on the TV screen. After about 5 minutes, he said, "Look, did braised pork shoulder make a statement in a separate chapter?" Lai Mingming flipped through his phone and said in surprise, "It's true. He made a separate chapter. Brother Wang, how would you know if you didn't look at your phone?" Father Wang pointed at the TV. The number of votes on TV just went up again, and braised pork shoulder is now almost 1 million. He must have made a statement to instigate a wave of excitement in the readers. Lai Mingming refreshed the list of novels, and was shaken again. F***K. He made 2 separate chapters in a row. And the title of the second single chapter is very domineering. It's called Please Shatter the Sky with Me. It's fine, we can catch up. By 12 o'clock, I'm guessing he'll only have 1,500,000 votes at most. I'll find someone later to straightaway push it to 3 million for me. Father Wang said lightly. Bro, but now, we only have close to 500,000 votes. Won't we be suspected of vote rigging if we do this? Lai Mingming was suddenly a little worried. At that moment, Lai Mingming suddenly noticed that Father Wang had already finished smoking and was switching to cigars. Father Wang raised an eyebrow. Manipulating votes? His braised pork shoulder had an average subscription of 150,000. So he could get 1.5 million monthly tickets. I have 300,000 tickets. What's wrong with 3 million monthly tickets? Lai Mingming. Father Wang. Edit a separate chapter for me. I'll do the talking, you write it. Lai Mingming quickly nodded. Alright. Where's the title? Father Wang. The title will be What Do I Need This Iron Rod For? Lai Mingming. Chapter 543. Father Wang was already a veteran god on the website, and there was no one in the online literature circle who didn't know his pen name Wang Situ. It was actually very common for authors to fight for monthly votes. The tougher an author's attitude toward fighting for votes, the stronger the sense of honor and cohesiveness of their fans. In Father Wang's view, this fight between braised pork shoulder and braised pig feet in sauce was very clever. Both of them were first-tier authors with high sales, and after this incident, they had increased their popularity. They wanted to take advantage of this double monthly votes opportunity to use their huge advantage in terms of votes to thoroughly crush him this month. Some young readers were too easily motivated. When they saw an author's lofty single-chapter acceptance speech, they were especially prone to impulse spending and would reward the author they supported while eating instant noodles. Of course, it was everyone's freedom to support someone. But Father Wang had always felt that one should consider things in the light of one's own circumstances and be a little more rational. For some readers who didn't have extra money to fight for monthly votes, simply subscribing to the official version was in fact already the greatest encouragement for the author. Thus, Father Wang basically wouldn't take the initiative to ask his readers for monthly votes or rewards. Even so, given his current status in the circle, Father Wang still topped the monthly rankings in all aspects. But he still had to publish the chapters that needed to be published, so Father Wang's chapters were usually filled with words of comfort. "Brother, go ahead, I'm ready." Lai Mingming had already logged into the background, using Father Wang's author account, and was ready to write a single chapter statement. Title: What do I need this iron rod for? I just write it like this. Father Wang nodded his head. Sita hasn't even reached the halfway mark when his path to godhood is blocked. Today he's third in the monthly votes and the gap is huge. This is indeed a critical moment of life and death. But Situ isn't anxious at all. Thanks to all my readers' love, Situ Lian will deliver the final blow at midnight tonight to overtake everyone. Although this book has only been published for 2 months, Situ also wants to fight for first place in this year's annual ranking list. Call me Situ crazy, but I'm Wang Situ, and I won't turn back until I hit the south wall. With this final blow, I will definitely turn everything into ashes. Lai Mingming. After he finished writing, Lai Mingming clicked send, and actually breathed a sigh of relief. Can we really make it? He looked at the increasing gap in the votes on the TV, and could not help but feel a little doubtful. The last book, Father Wang's Let Go of That Wet Nurse, had crushed the other books almost every month without a doubt. This was the first time that there had been such a huge disparity in votes. But in fact, in Father Wang's view, the monthly votes ranking this time was just a small change. The authors of Braised Pork Shoulder and Braised Pig Feet in Soy Sauce were both very good. But unfortunately, they had underestimated the depth of Father Wang's fan group. There was an epic-level big shot overseeing Father Wang's official fan group. In a normal situation, when there was such a huge difference in votes, Father Wang just needed to send this old friend a private message. At the same time, in a magnificent rectangular building in Jinghua City, Huaxiu Alliance building in the heart of Jinghua City, Huaxiu Alliance, whose full name was Huaxiu Alliance of Cultivators, was a cultivator organization directly under the jurisdiction of the state. What Huaxiu Alliance managed was all the recorded light forces in the whole of Huaxiu Nation. All the cultivator sects that were currently operating legally were under Huaxiu Alliance's jurisdiction, including the Society of Saints, that had sprung up previously, and was said to be a gathering of a large number of talented young cultivators, which was also under Huaxiu Alliance. Tonight, there would be an internal high-level meeting in Huaxiu Alliance's most exclusive conference hall on the top floor, and the 10 founding generals would all be present. General Yi Jianchuan, and Marshal Jiang Lei, arrived at the same time downstairs of the building. At the gate, a burly man in a special service uniform stopped the two of them. "Chiefs, please cooperate with us. This is just routine work." "Very well, go ahead." General Yi and Marshal Jiang nodded one after another. Special service personnel like this burly man in front of them densely covered the entire Huaxiu Alliance building. These people had been trained by Magnificent Immortal, and were already the most senior guards. Wherever this group was, the area within a radius of 50 li would be cleared out. In order to hold tonight's high-level meeting, all roads within a radius of 50 li around the Huaxiao Alliance building had been sealed off. Except for the guards and personnel involved in the meeting, no one was allowed to pass through. The special service personnel held a bronze mirror in their hands and shone it on Yi Jianchuan's and Jiang Lei's faces. This magic mirror was fused with a great spell to distinguish between truth and falsehood, and any disguise would be exposed. After confirming General Yi's and Marshal Zhang's identities, the nearby special service personnel saluted them at the same time, and the burly man in charge of checking their identities quickly stepped aside to make way for them. "Chiefs, please come in. Thank you for your cooperation. Has the head of state arrived?" General Yi, dressed in exercise clothes, floated in the air as usual. The burly man replied respectfully, "Yes, Chief. The head of state arrived half an hour ago." General Yi nodded slightly and didn't say anything else, as he directly rushed to the conference hall on the top floor with Marshal Jiang. When the two of them arrived at the conference hall, they found that most of the participants had already arrived, and all of them were familiar faces. Body Saint Minister Shi, nicknamed Body Saint Body of Steel, who had relied on his powerful physique back then to fight the 7 demon gods in the Battle of Sherman without falling. Wisdom Saint President Qi, president of the Cultivation Academy of Science, who was in charge of the layout and various holy arrays. Spirit Saint Secretary Sun Dakong, the current helmsman of the Alliance of 10,000 Schools, and the direct leader of the General Administration of 100 Schools, who had the ability to listen to the voices of all living things. Weapons Saint Minister Ku, director of Huaxiao's Magic Treasure Munitions Factory, who was proficient in the use of a variety of magic treasures. Dark Saint Minister Ing, head of the Intelligence Department, who traveled the country year-round on counter-espionage reconnaissance missions. His whereabouts were mysterious, his body movements superb, and he was proficient in the use of illusions. Medicine Saint President Luo, president of the Military Hospital General Hospital, who had a strong regenerative ability and could survive even if he only had his head left. Blade Master General Yi, Battle Saint Marshal Jiang, and the head of state sitting at the very front with his head bowed in deep thought. Now there were only 2 generals left, and the 10 founding generals had all been assembled. The last 2 people who hadn't arrived just happened to be ranked first and second in terms of overall combat strength. One was Bai Xing, chairman of the state-owned enterprise Huaxing, who was currently Huaxing's largest manufacturer of smart products, and had a unique explosive spell. Also known as Explosion Saint, General Bai Xing. General Bai's overall combat strength was currently ranked first. Chapter 544. General Yi and Marshal Jiang sat down in their designated seats one after another. President Qi happened to be presiding over the meeting this time. He put down his coffee cup and stood up from his chair. "Everyone, Explosion Saint General Bai and Skin Saint Minister Ku are on a mission." The 2 of them went together. The rest of them were stunned. These 2 people had extremely high combat strength, and it was really rare for them to work together on a mission. In fact, just based on the sudden announcement of a high-level meeting, it was enough to prove the urgency of this matter. It was likely that the crisis of this matter was imminent. President Qi nodded. "That's right. General Bai and Minister Ku have gone together. Thus, the 8 of us will discuss this meeting, and the head of state will make the final decision. General Bai and Minister Ku have already discussed the contents of this meeting. They have no objections at all, and will listen to the organization's arrangements. I will be presiding over this meeting." Everyone nodded. "Good." President Qi smiled slightly, then turned his gaze to the head of state next to him. "I'm sure everyone can already tell that the head of state today seems a little different. This isn't the real head of state." Spirit Saint Secretary Sun Dakong narrowed his eyes. He could hear the voices of all living things, so he could naturally pick up on the clues. In fact, he had already noticed it when he had arrived. "That's right. The head of state you're seeing now is an imitation weapon developed by our Academy of Science. But it's currently still in the experimental stage, and hasn't been announced to the public, so it can't be mass-produced. The head of state you're seeing now is a humanoid magic treasure, and its greatest power is currently infinitely close to that of an itinerant immortal. President Xi said, "This humanoid magic treasure has actually been in the works for a very long time. Previously, it was my Huaxiu Academy of Science and Weapons Saint Minister, who carried out secret research, and it wasn't until today that we received the head of state's permission that we made it public. I'm really sorry." "Business is business, old Qi, you're too polite." General Yi couldn't help laughing. "Although I can sense that there's something different about the head of state, I can't be completely sure. But to actually be able to make it look so real is truly shocking." Staring at this humanoid magic treasure that was almost identical to the head of state, Marshal Jiang couldn't help marveling. "What about its performance?" asked Medicine Saint Dean Luo. Dean Luo was the only woman among the 10 generals, and she was a very beautiful woman. Her brown hair was tied up in a bun, and she wore a pair of gold-rimmed glasses, which gave her the air of an elite. "The basic performance has been debugged. Of course, everyone here knows how powerful the head of state is. He is far more powerful than this humanoid artifact." President Xi replied, "This is our country's first humanoid magic treasure based on the head of state, number 001. The command of the humanoid artifact is connected to the head of state's neurons and can be directly controlled by the head of state. You can understand it as a kind of contract. However, humanoid Dharma treasures don't have artifact spirits because of their special craftsmanship. If we can reach the stage of mass production in the future, we can theoretically achieve mass contracts. However, how many contracts one can sign is actually greatly related to one's own strength, because the amount of spiritual power needed to control multiple humanoid magic treasures is also very considerable." All the generals present nodded. They had basically understood the purpose of this humanoid magic treasure. "Does that humanoid magic treasure have artificial intelligence?" At that moment, Secretary Dakong asked a rather crucial question. Given Huaxiu Nation's level of technology, it actually wasn't difficult to implement artificial intelligence. However, President Xi shook his head. "At this stage, we don't intend to use humanoid magic treasures with artificial intelligence. If it's combined with artificial intelligence, the humanoid magic treasure will have the ability to think on its own, and there will be no point in signing contracts." Everyone understood. To put it bluntly, they were afraid that after the humanoid magic treasure was combined with artificial intelligence, it would gain intelligence and learn to think, and in the end, it would go out of control. In order to avoid this kind of situation, signing contracts and controlling it remotely was clearly the best way. When old Qi said this, Wang Ming was also listening remotely in the research institute. But he couldn't see the image, and could only listen to the contents of the meeting, because he was one of the great contributors behind the scenes in the research on this humanoid magic treasure. President Xi and the head of state had also reported the contents of the meeting to him, for approval and permission to listen in. Of course, only President Xi, the head of state, and Wang Ming knew about this. For now, Wang Ming's identity was still a secret. When he heard the topic of artificial intelligence, Wang Ming couldn't help laughing. In fact, a lot of so-called artificial intelligence nowadays was pseudo-intelligence. True artificial intelligence could think on its own. However, the so-called artificial intelligence on the market was actually the result of software programming, and couldn't learn to reason and think on its own in the truest sense. Powerful magic treasures all had artifact spirits, which were formed after the spirit energy of heaven and earth fused with it day after day, and when the affinity between the artifact and its master reached a certain level. However, if artificial intelligence could be combined with a magic treasure, it could actually completely realize the idea of an artificial artifact spirit. But at the moment, this kind of technology was banned by a convention signed by various countries. In the end, people were still afraid of the idea of artificial intelligence destroying theory. Back to the humanoid magic treasure itself. Huaxiu Nation had always pursued peace above all else. Although the humanoid magic treasure could also be used as a weapon, this was the least of its uses. When General E, Secretary Dakong, Marshal Jiang, Dark Saint, Medicine Saint and the others heard this, they knew that the ultimate use of this humanoid magic treasure was to protect the head of state himself. However, this was probably already classified as a top-secret experiment. As for why they had chosen to announce it at this time, everyone who had heard this already had an idea in their hearts. This was because it was very likely to be related to what President Xi was going to say next, which was the theme of this meeting. None of them spoke as they quietly waited for President Xi to explain. At the very front, this number 001 simulation of the head of state was still sitting with its head lowered in deep thought. This was actually a specific posture when it was in standby mode. Everyone, I believe that everyone already knows what I'm going to say next. Chapter 545. Sure enough, President Xi's words made everyone feel at ease. In fact, everyone present could vaguely guess what President Xi was going to say next. Wang Ming, who was listening to the meeting on the other side, also had a calm expression on his face. He had known about this earlier than anyone else in the meeting, because the magic treasure God I Won, which had been used to monitor space fluctuations back then had been created based on his theory and the work of hundreds of scientific researchers. Old Xi had already analyzed the whole thing with him early on, including the origin of Devil Valley. So it could be said that Wang Ming couldn't be any calmer. The way Devil Valley appeared was a bit similar to the Gate Between Worlds, but it was also different. The Gate Between Worlds could only monitor the fluctuations in space. It could predict when the Gate Between Worlds would descend, but it could not accurately calculate where it would land. However, Devil Valley could be accurately pinpointed using the most sophisticated magic treasure instruments, such as the God I Won. And this was precisely the most troublesome part of the whole thing. Everyone here is no stranger to Devil Valley. In fact, some of you have personally gone to Devil Valley to take a look. Devil Valley is also known as Beast King's Remains. This is a mausoleum that the king of holy beasts, Devil King, built for himself back then, and is filled with all kinds of precious resources that are already extinct in the current era. Although it has already been 100 years since Beast King's Remains was last opened, despite our meticulous intelligence and security work, news that Devil Valley is about to open still spread like wildfire. Saying this, President Xi frowned. Spies? General E narrowed his eyes. Spies have always existed. As the head of the intelligence department, Dark Saint Chiefing said coldly. In fact, in recent years, I've already increased the intensity of anti-espionage investigations and have arrested countless foreign spies. But the other side still thinks of all kinds of ways to sneak into our country, which is really hard to guard against. Speaking up to this point, Chiefing sighed. You don't know, but the most bizarre spy I caught this year actually used a forbidden spell to shrink his body and hide himself in a capsule in order to sneak into our country. He hired a foreign student at a high price to hide the capsule in his anus. Then, luckily, when this exchange student entered the country, the chief of our investigation department, Sima Guang, used his sharp observation skills to discover that there was something wrong with this exchange student and immediately conducted a full body check. In the end, they found this capsule and successfully intercepted the spy at the customs. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable, Dark Saint said. I was kind enough to hear about this. Generally nodded. Was this Chief Sima Guang later rewarded? The Dark Saint said solemnly. Yes, our department specially gave him a title, Sima Guang's Anal Smash. Everyone, cough cough. President Xi cleared his throat and said, as you can see, because of Beast King's Remains, not only are there all kinds of dark forces stirring up in our country, even foreign forces want to take advantage of this opportunity to fish in. Beast King's Remains is the country's precious historical resource, and every extinct resource planted in it is our precious wealth. Actually, President Xi's goal was already very clear, and everyone couldn't help nodding when they heard this. These were already extinct resources that had only appeared in Beast King's Remains, and definitely couldn't be used by anyone. The most important thing was to protect these precious resources and find a way to cultivate them so that they could grow again in the modern world. Beast King's Remains Devil Valley is a historical resource unique to our Huaxiao nation. No illegal dark forces or foreign forces have the right to enter the remains. The head of state has already given clear instructions, and what we need to do is to protect the remains so that the extinct resources inside can continue to exist, and find a way to bring some of them out so that they can grow again in the modern environment. Saying this, President Xi looked at everyone. Does anyone have any other opinions about protecting Beast King's remains? If you do, just press the red button on the table as usual. Everyone shook their heads, and this proposal was unanimously passed. President Xi was ready to move on to the next segment. At that moment, Marshal Jiang asked, Explosion Saint and Skin Saint's mission is also related to protecting the remains? That's right. President Xi was actually about to say this. Who knows how many dark forces and foreign invading forces are now eyeing Beast King's remains covetously. In order to better protect Beast King's remains, Explosion Saint and Skin Saint are currently secretly carrying out a mission directly issued by the head of state to forge Beast King's remains. Forge Beast King's remains, everyone's hearts trembled. So there was this kind of operation. But those who are interested in entering Beast King's remains aren't ordinary people. Can they fool these people? Medicine Saint was a little doubtful. Forging Beast King's remains isn't something that happened on a whim. In fact, the head of state has already been laying out the overall situation a long time ago. The basic blueprints were drawn by the head of state himself, and Explosion Saint and Skin Saint are going together now to deal with the construction of the nomological laws. President Xi nodded with a smile. If the plan goes smoothly, the fake Beast King's remains will open after the entrance to the real remains opens, attracting illegal forces who have designs on Beast King's remains. The time difference between the real and fake remains opening is estimated to be no more than half an hour. I still think this is risky. Medicine Saint Chief Luo shook her head. President Xi smiled. You should have a little more confidence in our country's ability to make counterfeits. In the past, when things were the most difficult, we always made it through, didn't we? Chief Luo. Also, in order to ensure that the plan to forge Beast King's remains and create a smokescreen can be carried out correctly, we also need the help of Old Sun's alliance of 10,000 schools, President Xi said. Secretary Sun Dakong nodded and looked at President Xi. What can I do for you? Just say it. Because God I-1 has calculated that the entrance to Devil Valley of Beast Kings remains will eventually appear in Songhai City. Although the specific location still needs to be confirmed, I think Old Sun can make preparations in advance. President Xi said. I hope Old Sun can contact several high schools in Songhai City and have the headmasters organize a tour of Beast Kings remains for the students to study and broaden their horizons. Secretary Dakong frowned. But what if they run into those illegal forces? How can we guarantee the students' safety? President Xi raised an eyebrow. Who told you that these students are going to enter the fake remains? Before the entire plan starts, I'll arrange for someone to leak the fake remains first. Everyone. F***K. So it was a trick. Chapter 546. Speaking up to this point, everyone already understood what President Xi meant. This was a smokescreen. They were using the students to confuse that group of people who were trying to invade illegally, and at the same time enrich the students' extracurricular lives. Unlike before, most of the younger generation of cultivators didn't have particularly lofty ideals and pursuits. Furthermore, in high school, when Shinibu syndrome was concentrated, many students might start to get lost for various reasons. And then they would start to post all kinds of non-mainstream chicken soup in their WeChat moments and WeChat moments. Therefore, in order to reduce the occurrence of such phenomena and guide students to build a richer spiritual world and values, the Alliance of 10,000 Schools had planned many similar practical exchange activities over the years, such as the previous Spirit Sword Exchange meet, and the upgraded version of the PUBG military training exercise. All of these were spring outings, autumn outings, and summer camps were all extracurricular activities that schools originally planned every year. This year, the Alliance of 10,000 Schools' original plan was to upgrade these extracurricular activities, and the Alliance of 10,000 Schools would reimburse them if they didn't have enough funds. Apart from Spirit Beast Gardens and the Shao family compound, which were frequently visited extracurricular activities, schools everywhere would have more space to choose from. They could even organize tours outside the city to broaden their horizons. In fact, places of historical interest were a very good choice. Shanghai City's summer camp was usually held in August. Because Shanghai City's climate was a little strange, it was hottest in October, so students in Shanghai City started school later than students in other urban areas, as well as winter and summer vacations. Thus, the approval of Shanghai's summer camp location hadn't been completed yet. Secretary Dakong had originally planned to approve it after this Huaxiao Alliance high-level meeting, but that wasn't necessary now. He could directly approve it. As long as the students' safety can be guaranteed, I'll definitely approve of going to Beast King's remains, Secretary Dakong said. Visiting places of historical interest was part of the Alliance's plan this year to begin with, not to mention a place like Beast King's remains which open once every 100 years, and some people might never have the chance to go in their entire lives. No matter what they could learn inside, looking around would always help broaden their horizons. Sometimes, a person's horizons could often determine how high they would go in the future. This high didn't necessarily refer to their realm. It could also refer to their spiritual foundation or achievements in other areas. In fact, President Xi had already calculated the issue of safety. Whether it was the real remains or the fake ones, when the entrance to the remains opened, they would immediately send people to set up a true immortal barrier. Ordinary people wouldn't even be able to touch the stones inside the remains. Of course, a smokescreen is just a smokescreen. In order to avoid some cunning dark forces, we have also sent people to protect the safety of the students. My suggestion is that in addition to Secretary Sun Dakong, who will be organizing the student tour this time, we also send Dark Saint and the Doctor. Weapons Saint and I will use magic treasures to provide remote assistance, and if necessary, we can launch the Heavenly E-satellite. In addition, Head of State 001 will also be tasked with protecting the students this time, President Xi said. The corners of Wang Ming's eyes twitched when he heard this arrangement. This protective lineup was too strong. Other than Spirit Saint Dakong, there was also Dark Saint Minister Ing and Medicine Saint Minister Luo. There was also Old Qi, who was assisting from afar, Weapon Saint Minister Ku, who was in charge of the magical equipment arsenal, and Head of State 001, who was in the midst of testing. 5 perfected immortals and number 001. If word of this got out, some people would definitely think that the war between the two worlds, between the human race and the demon race, was about to break out again. The last time perfected immortals had been mobilized was already 1,000 years ago, when they had joined forces to fight the demon gods who had come out of the gate between worlds. Furthermore, it was one thing for 5 perfected immortals to be mobilized, but the Heavenly E-satellite would also work together. Wang Ming instantly felt that any villain who had designs on Beast King's remains would basically be dead the moment they tried to invade it. This satellite was actually a magic treasure, which could condense high-density spirit power inside, and could be directly controlled to launch a Heavenly E-bomb, which could directly fire a spirit power laser cannon in outer space to launch a long-range bombardment. Heavenly E-satellite. It was very obvious that when the 10 generals present heard this name, they couldn't help shuddering. Heavenly E-satellite, there's no need for that. Secretary Dakong wiped at his sweat. To put it bluntly, this thing was actually the nuclear bomb of the modern cultivation era. Its power was equivalent to an attack from a true immortal. If a true immortal was hit head-on, he wouldn't die, but he would lose half his life. The most important thing was that this thing was too powerful. With this one shot, Beast King's remains might directly be flattened. I also think it's a little exaggerated. General E nodded on the side. Don't worry everyone, it's not exaggerated at all. President Xi waved his hand. It's not a real bomb. Secretary Dakong. What do you mean? When our Heavenly E satellite was designed back then, we used live ammunition and duck gall to begin with. Live ammunition is indeed very powerful. Without the head of state's personal signature and approval, it can't be used casually. But a dud can be fired at any time. Dud? The mouths of the other 10 generals present all twitched. Even Weapons Saint was startled. There's this kind of setting. Why didn't I know about it? It was his munitions factory that had manufactured this Heavenly E satellite back then. He had seen the blueprints. This dud is just a program setting. You definitely wouldn't be able to tell from the original blueprints. It turns out that none of you knew about it. President Xi smiled slightly. The effect of a dud is a little similar to a real illusion spell. Although it looks no different from firing a live ammunition, it actually doesn't produce any energy. Everyone. Wang Ming. It wasn't just the 10 generals present. Even Wang Ming, who had personally been involved in setting up the program, didn't know about this. That was to say, the dud design had been completely added by old Qi himself. And apart from the head of state, probably no one else knew about it. General Li broke out in a sweat and silently raised his hand to ask, "Excuse me, what is the purpose of this dud design?" President Qi's answer was concise. "To scare people. Everyone. It's an era of peace now. How can it be so easy to launch a heavenly E-bomb? Since the founding of our Huaxiao nation, we've pursued world peace, not world nuclear war. So the design of a dud is very necessary. A dud doesn't have any power. It won't harm anyone. But at the very least it will make a noise." President Qi went on and on. For example, when the Shao clan released that Buddha's angry fire lotus, why was it so scary? It was because that mushroom cloud was big enough and loud enough. It looked like a strong deterrent. Chapter 547. President Xi had already thought of these plans in advance for this meeting. Wang Ming felt that this was in fact old Qi's usual style, which was to dupe. But in order to protect Beast King's remains this time, old Qi had actually set up a fake replica early on, which was enough to show how strong the protection this time was. And it was very clear that the ultimate goal of the 10 generals wasn't just to protect it, but to use practical action to issue a stern warning to those illegal forces who had designs on Beast King's remains. Then, according to procedure, if anyone has any objections to the summer camp plan and the protection plan that I just proposed, please press the oppose button in front of you, President Qi said as he looked around. According to Huaxiao Alliance's procedure, after each meeting, the 10 generals would vote on a plan before it would be submitted to the head of state for final approval. As long as more than half of the people in the meeting agreed, the plan would be passed. As wisdom saint, President Qi was an absolutely astute person. He had the experience of looking at the big picture, which even Wang Ming, who was known as the strongest brain, couldn't imitate. It was far from enough for a person to control the big picture by relying on IQ alone. What was needed was time and practical experience. Since the founding of Huaxiao Nation, there had been constant disturbances, and some evil dark forces had been extremely arrogant. At that time, Wang Ming hadn't been born yet, and it was old Qi who had personally made arrangements for these people. The might of wisdom saint wasn't undeserved. This was also the reason why Wang Ming was willing to stay by old Qi's side to learn. No one pressed the oppose button, and the proposal this time was still passed. Very good. Next, we'll wait for the head of state's final approval. Now, I will officially activate number 001 and have it dock with the head of state remotely. The number 001 that everyone is looking at now is still in standby mode. Wisdom Saint President Qi nodded in satisfaction. He then turned his gaze to number 001 next to him and said very affectionately, "I'm already infatuated with the old man at the door." His voice was extremely gentle, as if he was talking to his lover. What the hell? The 10 generals had goosebumps all over their bodies. The 10 generals were all founding ministers who had gone through thick and thin back then, and knew each other very well. But this was the first time they had seen President Qi act so affectionately. This was actually an activation password, and after saying this, President Chi's old face couldn't help turning red. Cough cough. This activation password was set by the head himself. And the password has been specially encrypted, so it can only be used to express emotions. The 10 generals. As soon as the activation password was given, Head of State 001's lowered head slowly looked up. Immediately afterward, his pupils began to focus. In the activated mode, the 10 generals in the field could already hear the sound of number 001's breathing. To be honest, after this 001 was activated, it was exactly the same as the head of state. There was no difference at all. President Chi explained on the side. Everyone can observe number 001's facial microexpressions. We've already achieved 100% synchronization. The head of state's facial expression can be perfectly synchronized with number 001's, including his movements, expression and tone of voice. Comrades. At this moment, Head of State 001 crossed his fingers and supported his chin as he spoke slowly. Even his voice was exactly the same as Princeps. It's like a clone, the female holy doctor exclaimed. But in fact, number 001 is more powerful than a clone, President Chi said. As we all know, a clone is formed from magic energy and will disappear once it is subjected to a violent frontal attack. But number 001 wouldn't. Moreover, number 001 could also cast his doppelganger. In fact, this is also in line with our cultivator's philosophy of Tao begets 1, 1 begets 2, 2 begets 3, 3 begets all things. The 10 generals in the room instantly sucked in breaths of cold air. What F*** King 3 begets all things. But if this humanoid magic treasure could really be mass-produced, that would really be too powerful. An itinerant immortal can at most summon 10,000 clones at a time. If we can produce 10 of these humanoid magic treasures, that would be an army. Marshal Jiang said repeatedly. Holy Doctor. Better not. She was extremely afraid that she would develop a phobia of old men. At this stage, I haven't decided to mass-produce it for the time being. Number 001 is still in the experimental phase, the head of state suddenly said. The conference hall instantly fell silent. As a leader, even a short sentence was mixed with great majesty, and people couldn't help feeling solemn. Comrades, although number 001 was in standby mode just now, I was still able to remotely monitor the contents of the meeting. After the meeting, I will officially approve President Chi's recollection report. But before that, I need to add 2 more points. The head of state said, based on the clues I currently have, there is currently an overseas dark force called Night Chief, which we need you to pay attention to. I've only mentioned this to old Chi, and the relevant investigation is still ongoing. General Lee frowned. What kind of force is this? Because it's an overseas dark force, it's very difficult for us to capture them at the moment. Furthermore, we lack evidence, and we can't apply for an international heavenly Tao arrest warrant. But one thing we can be sure of is that this Night Chief currently has a minor leader on the run in our country, and this person, perhaps you have heard of him. This person is the leader of the Demon Hunters Association, Bai Zhe, who was exposed a while ago. Everyone was shocked. It's actually him, the head of state. This person is currently on the run, and at this stage, we've only caught a tree goblin who is willing to serve as a witness. According to what the tree goblin said, this person is very likely to be the culprit behind the massacre of holy beasts back then. Furthermore, based on all the current signs, this person will definitely make a move on Beast King's remains. Dark Saint's intelligence department will need to put in a lot of effort to bring this person to justice before Beast King's remains opens. No problem, Dark Saint ministering said solemnly. The head of state, who was remotely controlling number 001, nodded. That's the first point I want to add. Now I want to add the second point. This is also very important, and also very terrifying. Everyone sat upright and still. For some reason, they suddenly felt that the atmosphere had become even more serious than before. Number 001 crossed his fingers and rested his chin in his hands. Comrades, do you know Wang Situ? The 10 generals present. On the other side, Wang Ming, who had been eavesdropping on the meeting, was also startled. The head of state. This is an author I like very much, but just 20 minutes ago, he sent me a text message, generally. Could it be that this person has information on the president of the Demon Hunters Association? No. The head of state shook his head. He said that the monthly votes for his novel have been exceeded, and by a whole 600,000. How terrifying. General E instantly sucked in a cold breath. Then Your Excellency Head of State means. The head of state. All of you contact the person in charge of that website and vote for me. The 10 generals present. The head of state was very calm. Set a small goal first. For example, before 12 o'clock tonight, send 100 million votes. Chapter 548. On the other side, Wang Ming put down the monitoring earphones with a bewildered look on his face. He repeatedly confirmed that he hadn't heard wrong. Wang Situ, wasn't that his uncle's pen name? The head of state was actually his uncle's fan? This was so shocking that Wang Ming couldn't help sucking in a cold breath, as his mind was already in a mess. At that moment, there were only 5 hours left before the end of the double monthly votes battle. Lai Mingming looked at the ranking list on his phone. The number 1 author, Braised Pork Shoulder, had already reached 1.6 million votes, while the number 2 author, Braised Pig Feet and Sauce, had 1.58 million votes. Neither side was giving in. Father Wang, on the other hand, had only just reached 800,000 votes after that superficial single chapter. Although it had increased by nearly 400,000, the gap between him and first and second place was getting wider and wider. However, Father Wang didn't seem worried at all as he calmly smoked a cigar and watched a TV series, not even bothering to watch the live vote count. In fact, Lai Mingming had his own understanding of the struggle for the monthly votes. In the beginning, it was a battle between authors. The quantity and quality of their updates often determined whether readers would enthusiastically vote for them. But in the middle and late stages, it basically didn't have much to do with the authors anymore. All that was left was a battle between nouveau riche readers. I just asked the chief's office and confirmed that Braised Pork Shoulder and Braised Pig Feet and Sauce weren't buying votes. Each of them has a sky-level sect backing them. Actually, when he said this, Lai Mingming already felt a sense of despair in his heart. What was the concept of a sky-level sect? Nowadays, a light sky-level sect's annual net profit was hundreds of millions. It wasn't strange at all for them to use a portion of their funds to give out red packets for monthly votes in order to support their favorite authors. Previously, Lai Mingming had thought that there was a problem with the votes of these 2 authors purely because he didn't know the situation. After all, at 6 o'clock, the 2 of them already had nearly 1 million monthly votes. Now that they were giving out red packets for monthly votes, 1 monthly vote cost 5 immortal gold. Ordinary people definitely wouldn't be able to afford such a large number of monthly votes. Oh, a sky-level sect, that's a little awesome. When Father Wang heard Lai Mingming's words, he couldn't help laughing. Lai Mingming almost vomited blood when he heard this. This wasn't just a little powerful. This was rather powerful. How many sky-level sects were there in the country that were certified by the government? No more than 50. To be able to rope in a sky-level sect as a backer was equivalent to having the backing of a financial group. Brother, aren't there any sky-level sects in your fan club? If there's no heaven rank, earth rank is fine too. Lai Mingming couldn't help but ask. After all, looking at the current fan base, Father Wang definitely had more fans than the other 2 authors. It was impossible that he didn't have any big-shot fans. Oh, you're talking about this. Someone did come looking for me before. He said he was from Spirit Sword Sect, Father Wang said. Spirit Sword Sect. Lai Mingming was shocked. This is a heaven-level sect. Brother. Moreover, the sect that supports Braised Pork Shoulder is none other than Spirit Sword Sect. Oh, I know, Father Wang said. But I refused when they asked to place an advertisement for the sect in my book. Lai Mingming. Why did you refuse? Out of habit. Father Wang pushed up his black-rimmed glasses. Real fans won't make so many demands. Lai Mingming. Looking at the nervous look on Lai Mingming's face, Father Wang couldn't help laughing. Why do I feel like you're even more nervous than I am? The gap in the monthly votes battle this time is too big. If we lose, I think some of our fans will leave and go to someone else. Lai Mingming sighed and hesitated to speak. Actually, what he said was a conservative estimate. After all, Father Wang was a veteran god on the website who had dominated the rankings for many years. If someone overtook him in this battle and slaughtered a god, it would definitely be used as news hype. In addition, the other two authors now had sky-level sects as their backers. Lai Mingming felt that Father Wang's days in the future would be very difficult if this wave of momentum rose. Because Father Wang had refused the sky-level sect's advertisement placement. If the person at the helm of the sky-level sect was narrow-minded, he might even suppress Father Wang. However, Father Wang still looked unperturbed, which Lai Mingming couldn't understand. Father Wang. Don't be nervous, just wait and see. Sky-level sects indeed had a very strong foundation, but the problem was that these two authors' sky-level sects were leftovers from Father Wang. What would they use to compete with him in the rankings? Unexpectedly, the monthly votes battle surrounding the double monthly votes event attracted a lot of attention. After Wang Ling finished his homework, he glanced at the ranking list and saw that Father Wang was in third place. He immediately opened some forums and news apps, and sure enough, this monthly votes battle had already been reported in the news. News headline: The Fall of a God? Cultivation Chinese Network's veteran great god Wang Situ has fallen behind in the monthly votes battle by a huge margin for the first time. There were a lot of similar news reports, and in the blink of an eye, they dominated all the major news channels and trending topics. While Lai Mingming and Father Wang were talking downstairs, Wang Ling had actually heard some news about the sky-level sects backing the two authors who were competing for votes. Wang Ling guessed that this news might have been fanned by the sky-level sects behind the scenes. In fact, in previous years, there had been many cases of sects and popular authors cooperating with each other. The popular authors would advertise for the sects in their books, and the sects would support the authors in the form of competing for monthly votes or giving them tips. This was due to the current market. Nowadays, there were a lot of cultivation novels on the internet, and the popular authors would often construct their own novel worldviews on the basis of modern cultivation. Therefore, some sect elders had long since set their eyes on this area of advertising business. Some sects would even find some novel authors to specially customize a cultivation novel with their own sect as the background. But initially, it was mostly Earth-level sects who looked for authors to cooperate with, because Earth-level sects lack students. But who knew when it had started, sky-level sects had also started to stir things up. There was a lot of discussion in the class group. In fact, there were a lot of people in the class who were Father Wang's fans, but they were all students after all. 5 immortal gold bars for a monthly vote. Where would the students get the money from? Wang Ling felt that as students, it was already pretty good if they could subscribe to the official version. Using the name of the students to say that they didn't have the money to read pirated versions was never an excuse. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had always been following Father Wang's books. So after seeing the news, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal immediately started to express his support in the group. Everyone, Senior Wang's book, The Live Streaming Life of the Immortal King, is now ranked 3rd in the monthly votes list. Can I ask everyone to mobilize their strength to help Senior Wang canvass for votes? Dharmaraja was the first to respond, and he immediately sent an okay gesture. No problem. I'll vote for Senior Wang right away. Salian Jinren sent a fist salute gesture. I don't really read this kind of novel, but I still support Senior Wang. I'll contribute 100 monthly votes. Immortal Toya. But Senior Immortal, our strength alone isn't enough. The gap is a little big. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal nodded. Everyone vote first. I've already posted an event in my cultivation forum to cheer for Senior Wang like crazy. No matter what, we have to support Senior Wang. As he said this, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal directly sent out a link to the event. Chapter 549. As the administrator of the cultivation forum, grenade-throwing senior immortal rarely popped up, and would only go and deal with disputes between forum members. However, it was actually quite rare for him to make a serious post in support of someone. Wang Ling had in fact always felt that grenade-throwing senior immortal's appeal couldn't be underestimated. As the famous Great Death-courting senior in the cultivation circle, this post almost immediately spread in the circle. In less than 10 minutes after the War of the Top post was posted, there were already nearly 1,000 replies. What the hell? Senior Immortal actually popped up. I didn't expect Senior Immortal to also follow this book. He's actually asking for monthly votes for Wang Situ. It looks like he's a true fan. Wah wah wah. I like Big Wang Situ. But Spirit Sword Sect is having an event. They say that if you give 20 monthly votes to braised pork shoulder, they'll give you a plate of chilled Wang Lu sashimi. Senior Immortal is a good friend. Fist salute. Fist salute. But I'm afraid Wang Situ is going to lose the monthly votes battle this time. The difference in votes is too big. Looking at these comments, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's heart was as clear as a mirror. There was actually a limit to what he could do with the forum's resources. At most, he could build momentum and give Father Wang more support. After all, there was a difference between the Cultivation Forum's audience and the Cultivation Chinese Network's audience for novels. It was almost impossible for a post to overtake Wang Situ in the number of votes. Because of the double monthly votes event, Father Wang's current vote gap was already close to 1 million. Generally speaking, the last day of the monthly votes battle, or the last hour of the double monthly votes event, was when Wang Situ's real power would be unleashed. However, whether it was Spirit Sword Sect, which supported braised pork shoulder, or Divine Dynasty Sect, which supported braised pig feet and sauce, these two great sky-level sects had yet to show their true strength. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal looked at the ranking list and couldn't help frowning. When all was said and done, this was the foundation of a sky-level sect. However, he was only running an online forum. Although he had made a lot of money over the years, he definitely wouldn't be able to go head-to-head with a sky-level sect. Nowadays, there were actually a lot of companies that used the internet economy to develop the real economy. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had always had a bold idea. He also wanted to start a sect. However, this was not an easy matter. To really put it into practice, a lot of preparation had to be done. The construction of the sect's planning, the sect's philosophy, the school system, the business model, the enrollment brochure. All of these had to be thought through. However, based on the current development of the Cultivation Forum, even if the above problems could be solved, the final result of the sect's aptitude assessment would only be Earth tier at best. An Earth-level sect wasn't grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's goal. Since he was going to do it, he had to do it to the best of his abilities. Of course, this was all in the future. The most important thing now was to get votes for Senior Wang. Although sky-level sects had solid foundations, the Cultivation Forum's network influence wasn't low either. In fact, there was still a general who had not been mobilized yet. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was about to open the live streaming app to look for Daoist Guang, when the latter directly sent him a private message. Brother Lei, Senior Wang's novel is asking for votes now? I've already advertised it for him in the live stream room just now. Daoist Guang attached a screenshot of the live stream room. At the top of the room, Daoist Guang had pasted a link to Father Wang's novel in bold, and the number of viewers in Daoist Guang's live stream room was now fixed at more than 10 million. He had practically become the #1 entertainment live streamer in the live stream circle. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Thank you, Brother Guang, for your support. However, the problem facing the advertiser was the same as grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Because the audience was different, there were very few people who could help Father Wang. After all, among these 10 million people, not everyone read novels, and not everyone was a nouveau riche. Most of Daoist Guang's fans were very young, and the #1 spot on the fan list was currently occupied by Father Wang's registered ID. Has 3 days and 2 sleeps been updated? Daoist Guang sighed and typed a reply. But Brother Lei, I don't think the effect is very good. I just heard from Water Friends that the other two authors' books are backed by Sky-level sections. With just the two of us, I'm afraid we won't be able to go head-to-head with the Sky-level sect. At that moment, Dharmaraja sent a message in the group. Senior Wang's votes are rising very quickly and are now at 1.2 million. But the votes of the other two authors are already close to 2 million. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal frowned. A gap of 800,000 from beginning to end. How about we think of another way? Like buying votes? Absolutely not. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal immediately shook his head and replied. Since the votes of the other two authors weren't bought, but are backed by Sky-level sects, if we help Senior Wang get votes like this and are later found out, I'm afraid we'll become a laughingstock. And most importantly, Senior Wang's reputation will also be affected. After Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said this, the group immediately fell silent. At that moment, 9x Man, who had been silent all this time, suddenly sent a fist salute emoji. Everyone, 9x Man will offer Senior Wang 500,000 monthly votes later. As soon as this message came out, the chat group instantly exploded. Immortal Toya. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Silian Jinrun. Lightning Dharmaraja. F***K. It turns out that 9x Man is an invisible nouveau riche. Wang Ling was silent because he knew 9x Man's true identity. This was the alternate account of General E, one of the 10 founding generals. Note, 9x Man's identity can be found in Chapter 231 of the novel, The Legendary Plan Master, and Chapter 420, 9x Man with an Acting Dream. Actually, when he saw this, Wang Ling already knew that Father Wang had most likely already spoken to his strongest fan. In the end, he was one of the 10 founding generals' 5 immortal gold bars, for a monthly vote. So 500,000 monthly votes would be 2.5 million immortal gold bars. This was simply terrifying. At the same time, Lai Mingming was still anxiously waiting at the television door. Father Wang was watching a TV series, so he could only keep scrolling through the list on his phone. What was gratifying was that Father Wang's votes were still increasing. Although the gap was narrowing, it was clearly still far from enough. I'm going to the bathroom. Father Wang patted Lai Mingming on the shoulder. As soon as his but left the sofa, Lai Mingming directly grabbed the TV remote control and wanted to switch the channel to the one where the monthly votes were being counted. But after switching a few channels, Lai Mingming felt that something wasn't quite right with the TV program. Cultivation Sports Channel. At the World Table Tennis Competition, a male athlete from the national table tennis team, surnamed Ma, was giving a speech after winning the championship. I want to thank my motherland. I want to thank my parents. I want to thank my coach. I want to thank my partners who persevered in training with me. I also want to thank Teacher Wang Situ's The Live Streaming Life of the Immortal King for the happiness it brings me. Every time I feel like I can't hold on anymore, it's Teacher Wang Situ's book that encourages me. Please help me cast your monthly votes. Thank you. Lai Mingming. Bewildered, Lai Mingming changed the channel. Cultivation Food Channel. A chef was being interviewed by a female reporter on the street. Mr. Chuangjin, how do you find inspiration when you create all kinds of delicacies? This chef called Chuangjin smiled slightly at the camera and made a peace sign. Of course I watched the live streaming life of the Immortal King. Teacher Wang Situ writes it so well. 666, Lai Mingming. He changed the channel again. Cultivation News Broadcast. The female anchor sat upright and still as she reported international news. Today, Minister Shi, the spokesperson for the Ministry of National Defense, says that he will accompany Mixiu Nation to the end for stirring up trouble for no reason. After saying this, the female anchor suddenly paused. Because at that moment, a document was suddenly handed to her from the side. Her good professionalism prevented her from panicking in the slightest. Ladies and gentlemen, we have urgent news. The female anchor looked down at the contents of the document, then quickly raised her head again. Please offer your monthly votes to author Wang Situ's The Live Streaming Life of the Immortal King. Thank you. Chapter 550. Lai Mingming rubbed his eyes repeatedly and picked his ears to confirm that he wasn't hallucinating or hearing things. That was right. He hadn't seen wrong. All the programs were now broadcasting the news of Father Wang begging for monthly votes. Whether it was sports athletes, domestic celebrity artists, or big shots from all walks of life, they were all begging for votes on Father Wang's behalf on TV. Lai Mingming glanced at the trending topic list. Sure enough, this matter had already become a hot search, and it wasn't just one hot search. In a flash, the trending topics XXX supports Wang Situ, and XXX begs for votes for Wang Situ completely dominated the list. Lai Mingming glanced at the S group chat and found that all the S in the group were calm. This was a private S group that Lai Mingming had set up himself, and the S in the group were all on good terms with him. There were colleagues from other novel teams, his own leaders, and even some S from partner sites. Lai Mingming was a blooming social flower in Cultivation Chinese Network, and he lived up to his name. Why isn't anyone reacting? It's such a big deal. Lai Mingming typed 3 exclamation marks in a row to express his astonishment. The chief of Cultivation Chinese Network, whose ID was squad leader, looked at the screen with an indifferent expression. Little Song, you're still too young. But you're not Wang Situ's first after all. If you had been in charge of his books from the beginning, you would probably have gotten used to it long ago. Teacher Wang Situ isn't an ordinary person. Captain, what do you mean? It's hard to say. It was very obvious that this chief knew something. Do you know why today, when braised pork shoulder and braised pig feet in sauce overtook teacher Wang Situ in votes, the outside world was abuzz with different opinions, but our eel department didn't react at all? Lai Mingming was startled. Damn, so there really wasn't any reaction? I thought the eel department was disconnected from the internet. Chief Squad Leader, let's not take this matter too seriously. In any case, you just need to remember that writers who want to compete with teacher Wang Situ for monthly votes are basically courting death. Actually, when the chief said this, Lai Mingming already seemed to understand a little, because in terms of the power of social interaction on TV and trending topics, Father Wang could indeed be called invincible. To be able to mobilize such large-scale support, just what kind of power was behind this? Lai Mingming's imagination had already begun to run wild. But the problem was that he hadn't seen Father Wang do anything. It seemed like he was simply sending a text message to one of his rich fans. Now, it seemed that the tycoon was obviously not an ordinary tycoon. It was very likely that he came from a force with a stronger background and heritage than a sky-level sect. Lai Mingming was very perceptive, and immediately thanked him. Thank you, Captain. There were some things that could be seen through but not said out loud. It's just a small matter. In any case, just remember to be calm in the future. Also, if a reporter came looking for you to interview teacher Wang Situ or something, the website's uniform policy was to reject them all. Teacher Wang Situ didn't like it. I'll emphasize this in the meeting tomorrow. The squad leader nodded and said, in any case, remember, your task is to urge him to update at all costs and in all ways possible. This is your main task. You basically don't need to worry about the ranking competition. In any case, as long as teacher Wang Situ is still publishing, he'll always be number 1. Lai Mingming. Okay, Captain. Saying this, the chief was blank for a moment before he suddenly said, you should know that guru author who competed with teacher Wang Situ back then. Zhu Gu, right? This teacher Zhu Gu was originally also from our website. Lai Mingming nodded weakly. I know. At that moment, the chief sent a facepalm emoji. Now you should know why teacher Wang Situ drove teacher Zhu Gu away back then, right? Lai Mingming. It was July 18th on Tuesday in the 13th week of the semester. Last night's war of the tops between Father Wang, Wang Situ, and Pork Shoulder and Pig Feet had ended with Father Wang's crushing victory by 12 o'clock. By the time the double monthly votes campaign had ended, Pork Shoulder and Pig Feet's monthly votes were both around 3 million. Only Father Wang stood at the forefront with 6 million monthly votes, leading the pack. In fact, Father Wang's votes last night had actually already exceeded 10 million, but the website had hidden the remaining 4 million votes, which Father Wang had agreed to. After all, They were all from the same website, and he had to leave some face for his peers. The fallout from this incident wasn't small. On his way to school in the morning, Wang Ling heard people around him talking about it. After all, there had been so many celebrities supporting him last night. Yesterday's topic had been the support of various celebrities, and today's topic was, who the hell is Wang Situ? As soon as Wang Ling entered class in the morning, he heard Dopey Gua making all sorts of noises as he recounted the fierce battle in the War of the Tops last night. The students in class weren't just onlookers. In fact, most of them were actually Father Wang's fans. In some sense, Wang Ling felt that his old man was also invincible in another way. Dopey Gua slapped his thigh as he sighed. Wang Situ is really too strong. That wave last night. TSK. The only thing missing was His Excellency the Head of State's support. Wang Ling. Someone was suddenly a little curious. But then again, who on earth is Wang Situ himself? It's said that apart from the website's no one has ever seen Wang Situ in person. Also, this guru Wang Situ never appears on screen or participates in events. He does have a Weibo, but he rarely posts anything, and the website manages it for him. Dopey, have you found anything? Little Peanut asked. At the same time, everyone in class couldn't help turning to look at Dopey Gua. Last time, I was kind enough to hear you say that you have an uncle who works at the National Film Academy. What does the National Film Academy have to do with this? Is the director going on stage? The National Film Academy, for short, the National Telecommunications and Network Security Administration. Super Chen's lips twitched as he answered. Last night, I did have an uncle who looked into Wang Situ's identity. At the mention of this, Dopey Gua sighed and was a little gloomy. But before he could find anything, he was punished by the leader. He was suspended from work for a week, and is now doing a self-reflection at home. Everyone trembled at these words, and they inexplicably felt the power of society. It was amazing that there was actually something in this world that Dopey Gua didn't know. At that moment, Super Chen said jokingly, "Actually, I've been wondering, could this Wang Situ be Wang Ling's dad? Ha 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 ha. Even their surnames are the same." Chapter 551. Number 60 high school's midterm exams had already ended in the morning, and Wang Ling was very satisfied with his steady performance. If nothing unexpected happened, he should be able to rank 7th or 8th in class. As for whether it was 7th or 8th, that would be up to fate. There were only 15 people in class in total, so 7th or 8th actually didn't make a difference. Sometimes he even felt that he was pretty Buddhist-like. That afternoon, Number 60 High School happened to welcome its first school activity after the tense midterm exams, the district sports meet. The sports meet this time wasn't as troublesome as the previous spiritual sword exchange meet. The military training exercise for the 6 schools was a rare large-scale activity. The district sports meet adopted a system where the judges would go to school, except for the Battle of Soul Pets, which was an entertainment event. The other events would be scored by the professional referees, invited by the General Administration of 100 Schools of the Municipal Education Bureau. Then, it would be directly published on the scoreboard on the internet. All the competition points were open and transparent, and even the results and rankings could be checked immediately. Therefore, there was no need to travel back and forth for the District League tournament this time. The students were all in their own schools. The only Battle of Soul Pets would be held in the Spirit Beast Appraisal Center in the city, which Loopy Toad and Wei Ji had been to before. During the competition, the Spirit Beast Appraisal Center had a specialized dojo for spirit beasts to duel. The event he needed to participate in this afternoon was a relay run with Fang Xing and the others. There were a total of 10 people participating in the 10,000-meter relay race, with each person running a kilometer. At 1:30 in the afternoon, a lot of people had gathered on number 60 high sports field. Students from all classes had come to the sports field and sat down on the ground, drawing a circle around their classes outside the track. Wang Ling noticed that the referees sent by the Municipal Public Security Bureau were already in place. Including Odd Zhua, There were 4 people in total. It was said that 3 of them were referees, and 1 was in charge of arbitration. Audiobook was in charge of arbitration. At that moment, the 3 referees were talking to Old Antique in the distance. Old Antique was now very useful, because he was good with words. Not only was he now a history teacher, but number 60 High's diplomatic activities basically involved him. How did people communicate with each other? Brag. Who could boast better than Old Antique? The history teacher's head was full of illusions. According to the schedule, Headmaster Chen was about to announce the speech before the start of the sports meet. However, there were still some classes that weren't in position yet. The students who were already in position on the sports field were whispering to each other, making the whole scene seem a little noisy. Look, Senior Zhua. Senior Zhua is getting more and more handsome. I feel like you've matured a lot since the last time I saw you. When Zhua appeared, Wang Ling heard a lot of boys and girls cheering. Previously, Zhua's image had just been that of a legendary senior who had killed a demon king. But after experiencing several major incidents in succession and arresting several major criminals, Zhua's image in the hearts of many number 60 high students had instantly grown tens of thousands of times. I heard that the last time the Demon Hunters Association was destroyed, it was Senior Zhua who received a tip-off and personally took the lead to catch the culprit. Thanks to Senior Zhua, the branches of the Demon Hunters Association have been suppressed everywhere, and countless spirit beasts have been rescued. This is truly a great deed of virtue, but it's a pity that the boss behind the Demon Hunters Association hasn't been caught yet. Also, did you notice first it was those Shadow Stream killers, then the Master of Shadow Stream Jiang Luyue, then the Old Devil, the Master of Immortal Mansion, and then Evil Sword God. Senior Zhua was the one who caught all of them. Senior Zhua must have a high IQ. Why do you think so? Think about it. With his cultivation at the peak late golden core stage, how could Senior Zhua have survived until now? Speaking up to this point, this crazy boy suddenly stood up and shouted loudly, Senior Zhua. The boy suddenly stood up and shouted loudly, Senior Zhua. I've always called you. My brain, my heart. Every organ in my body is saying, I call you. Senior Zhua. Are you in an online relationship? Every organ in my body is saying, I call you. Senior Zhua. Are you in an online relationship? Everyone was horrified at this scene, and Wang Ling sighed. What kind of courage was that in broad daylight, under the clear sky of heaven and earth? Then, this boy was pulled away by the teacher in charge for a lecture. Super Chen and Dopey Gua, who were sitting next to Wang Ling, were also stupefied by this scene. Super Chen. Who is this person? Dopey Gua answered in a low voice. I'm looking for someone who's a senior in high school. He's in the same class as Senior Yu. Apparently, he held back for 4 years. During the Shuego sect incident a while ago, Husu's mom even dissed Teacher Yi. Note: for a previous story, see chapter 356 of the novel, Parents and Teachers. Super Chen was startled. What a freak. Why didn't the school expel this person? Dopey Gua shrugged. Because his grades are up. And they're improving by leaps and bounds. Super Chen was blank. How did his grades suddenly improve? Speaking up to this point, Dopey Gua couldn't help looking at Zhua in front of him. This is the power of a role model. A good poor student, turned gay just like that. Super Chen sighed. Actually, I feel that Senior Zhua might not be as heaven-defying as we think. Maybe he's just lucky, or maybe he's just a scapegoat. I've always thought this, but I feel that it's unrealistic for someone to be so accurate every time he picks up a scapegoat. Wang Ling. 5 minutes later, the noisy sports field fell silent once more. Standing in the leader's seat, Headmaster Chen raised a microphone. Students, let me say a few words. Then half an hour passed. Throughout the entire process, Zhua stood behind Headmaster Chen with his hands clasped behind his back and a smile on his face, looking very modest. Super Chen and Dopey Gua noticed that Zhua's gaze was fixed on one spot the whole time, as if it was their position, and his eyes kept darting around. Super Chen asked Dopey Gua in a very low voice, what is Senior Zhua looking at? Dopey Gua. Of course he's looking at girls. There are indeed a lot of pretty girls in grade 1 this year. Superchun shook his head. Senior Zhua isn't that kind of person. He wouldn't lay a hand on a junior sister from his alma mater. I think there's something wrong with the look in his eyes. He looks very modest and respectful, as if his Shifu is here. Wang Ling. Dopey Gua. Although Headmaster Chen didn't teach Senior Zhua, he was also Senior Zhua's leader at number 60 high school, so I think it's pretty normal. Senior Zhua is now one rank higher, but he still maintains this kind of humble and pure heart. It really isn't easy. Super Chen narrowed his eyes. He felt that Headmaster Chen might not be the most important part of this respect. Super Chen could only reluctantly accept Dopey Gua's reason. Senior Zhua seems to be looking at us all the time. That look in his eyes. If I didn't know better, I would think his Shifu was sitting between the three of us. Chapter 552. Wang Ling felt that Super Chen seemed to have awakened some strange attribute. This intuition was simply a little frighteningly accurate. At 2:20, the much-anticipated men's 10,000 meters relay officially began. Because number 60 high school's sports field was limited, there was only 400 meters, and each person had to run 2.5 laps in the 10-person relay on a sword. The spirit sword used in the competition was provided by the referees. It was a black steel sword, which was very wide and pitch black. It looked very heavy, and was actually quite difficult to control. This black steel sword was equivalent to a relay baton in an ordinary relay race. The rules of the relay race were to control the spirit sword to float above one's head, and then control the sword to run the relay race at the same time. It was an exercise in the skill of being one with one's mind and eye, and one had to be highly focused. If one was the slightest bit distracted during the run, the spirit sword above one's head might fall, and it would take time to control it to float again. Thus, concentration was very important in this 10,000 meters relay race, and teamwork was equally important. The person receiving the baton had to calculate the time accurately. While receiving the baton, he had to inject his spirit force into the black steel sword above the previous person's head. This way, the black steel sword would always be suspended in the air. This was the best way to save time. Wang Ling and Super Chun were the only contestants in grade 1, class 3, while Lotus Sun and Feather Lin would compete in the women's 10,000 meters relay race. In order to cultivate a tacit understanding of the 10-person relay race, Wang Ling had practiced it a lot in PE class at school. Except for Fang Xing and Jiang Bai from class 2, he actually wasn't familiar with the other students in the other classes. However, Jiang Bai wasn't participating this time. For ordinary foundation establishment students, the 10,000-meter relay was a physically and spiritually exhausting activity. Jiang Bai had to deal with the archery event the next day, so Teacher Yi had to ensure that Jiang Bai's spiritual power and stamina were at their peak. This was directly related to the problem of concentration. During the 10,000 meters relay race, Fang Xing had run 4,000 meters on a sword in PE class in 1 minute and 30 seconds, which was an average speed of 44 meters per second. This was actually the highest speed a peak late foundation establishment cultivator could run at full speed, without activating the White Knight spell and immortal mode. Fang Xing's true strength was that of an itinerant immortal, so controlling his speed was a piece of cake for him. Sometimes, Wang Ling actually envied Fang Xing quite a bit, because he could control his own strength. But that was also because he didn't have primordial qi in his body. Otherwise his situation wouldn't be much better than Wang Ling's. So after a few practice sessions, he calculated his running speed a little. Wang Ling didn't want to stand out too much. Taking into account the overall fighting strength of the participants in the men's 10-man relay event, it was most appropriate for him to keep his running speed to around 20 meters per second. Now it was time to assemble the contestants. Teacher Yi waved a small flag at the side of the track. "Let's go, Wang Ling." Super Chen immediately patted him on the shoulder. Then, the two of them stood up and walked in the direction of Teacher Yi. Wang Ling and Super Chen took off their jackets. Number 60 high school uniform was the only one throughout the year, and it was warm in winter and cool in summer. Underneath it was a short-sleeved sports shirt, paired with a jacket and pants with the word elite printed on it for the elite class. The uniform was made of spirit silk cotton and fit very well, so that it wouldn't be too cold in winter or too hot in summer. However, it had already been decades since number 60 high school uniform had been revised. Previously, Wang Ling had heard that in the second year of high school, the school would customize a new set of uniforms for all 4 seasons: spring, summer, autumn, and winter. It was said that Huagua Water Curtain Group's construction funds had already been approved. When the time came, it wouldn't just be a new uniform. It was possible that the whole of number 60 high would be refurbished this summer. The teaching building would be renovated, and even the sports field would be expanded. But of all the renovations, it was said that Headmaster Chun had decided to keep 2 things as they were. One was the old stone carvings at number 60 high's gate, which had been there since the school's founding. The other was the spirit palm trees, which the students jokingly called strong trees, which were planted next to the teaching building, but which were still rooted here despite being in their twilight years. When the 10 contestants went on stage, Wang Ling noticed that a lot of people were staring at him. Of course, among all the complicated gazes, Ajua's was the most blazing. "Shifu, you can do it!" Ajua did his best to restrain his emotions as he stared at Wang Ling, and shouted continuously in his heart. He knew that Wang Ling could read minds, so he could definitely hear him. Wang Ling. At the same time, some girls discussed in low voices. "Who's this guy? I don't know. I think he's from grade 1 class 3. Wow, I've been at school for so long, why haven't I seen this guy before? Does he really have no presence?" At that moment Jiang Bai, who was sitting next to the girls, raised his head silently. Senior Zhua borrowed his spirit sword at the last spirit sword exchange meet. "Oh, so it's him." The girls were instantly enlightened, and they looked a little embarrassed. It wasn't that they hadn't seen him before, but that they had selectively forgotten about him. Jiang Bai hugged his legs as he sat on the ground and muttered in a low voice, "Classmate Wang Ling, he's so awesome." "I don't see how he's so awesome. His presence is so weak, his grades must be average," said one of the girls. "Also, he looks average and isn't handsome. If he was a really handsome guy, I would remember him at first glance." Ajua heard everything this girl said. On the rostrum, he turned his head slightly with a smile and asked Headmaster Chun, "Teacher Chun, that girl over there, which class is she from?" He had always called Headmaster Chun Teacher Chun. Headmaster Chun took a look and immediately replied, "Oh, regular class 2, the class of Jiang Bai's son, the head of kitchen knife sect." "I see," Ajua smiled again. "Classmate Jiang Bai has a competition tomorrow, so you can skip today's homework. As for the others, add 1 more. Oh no, 2 more test papers. I borrowed these test papers from Secretary Dakong. You can't buy them on the market." Headmaster Chen's eyes instantly lit up. "Good. I'll explain it to their teacher in charge later." But Headmaster Chen was also a little puzzled. "Then the other classes. Do the same for the other classes," Ajua said mysteriously. "This is a trial run, and it's confidential." Headmaster Chen looked as if he had suddenly understood. On the other side of the competition field, Super Chen silently pulled up his trouser legs to reveal his strong calf muscles. This was obviously the standard equipment for a sports talent student. Super Chen's speed definitely wasn't as fast as Fang Xing's, because of the limitations of their realms. However, Super Chen's family cultivated ancient martial arts, and he was also a martial artist. For the late foundation establishment stage, his speed really wasn't considered slow. At full speed, he could reach more than 30 meters per second. Wang Ling initially thought that Super Chun was just pulling up his trouser legs to show off his calf muscles. But in the end, he realized that after Super Chun was done, Fang Xing had also started to crouch down and pull up his trouser legs. Unlike Super Chen's muscular calves, Fang Xing's calves were long and slender, and had the proportions of a model on the rostrum. Ajua yelled in his heart again, "Super Chun! Super Chun! After Super Chun, Fang Xing! Fang Xing! After Fang Xing! After Fang Xing, Shifu!" Wang Ling looked around suspiciously, and then noticed that the boys participating in the competition had all started to crouch down and pull up their trouser legs. Because the bottom of our school pants is a little fat, it's better to blow up our trouser legs when we're doing high-intensity exercises. These straps will protect your muscles. As he explained, Teacher Yi handed out the straps and glanced at Wang Ling. Classmate Wang Ling, don't just stand there. Hurry up and pull up your trouser legs. Chapter 553. Wang Ling's calves were different from Super Chen's and Fang Xing's. They weren't as slender or muscular, and the first impression they gave was that they were clean and well-proportioned. He rolled up his trouser legs, and then tied them up like the other boys. At that moment, Teacher Yi looked at Wang Ling and observed his muscles. During the test run earlier, Wang Ling had been able to easily jog on the spirit sword without a blush or gasping for breath. This was clearly the result of his regular cultivation and exercise. Apart from PE classes, Teacher Yi had also worked as a fitness coach. He felt that given Wang Ling's physical ability, he should at least have distinct muscles, instead of looking like he didn't have any at all. Student Wang Ling is a little thin. Teacher Yi couldn't help frowning. Next to him, a boy whose muscles were even more exaggerated than Super Chen's couldn't help laughing. Is this bro okay? He didn't feel like he was running very fast during the test. He's so thin. He's like a boiled chicken. Wang Ling didn't say anything. He pretended he hadn't heard anything and simply ignored him. This person's muscles were pretty impressive, and he must have been very fierce when he worked out. But in fact, these muscles didn't mean much in actual combat. Having more muscles wasn't necessarily better. Excessive muscle training was very likely to cause them to block meridians and slow down the flow of spirit energy. Hence, it was more about muscle quality than quantity. Furthermore, it wasn't that Wang Ling didn't have muscles. It was just that they were hidden away. Are you mocking our class? Super Chen looked at this person. This was Shi Shuai from Elite Class 2, who was in the same class as Fang Xing. Furthermore, he was famous for being a contrarian. He really liked to bicker with people. That's right, I'm mocking him. I think I can run faster than this boiled chicken classmate. Shi Shuai chuckled. You want to fight? Super Chen wasn't convinced. He had long since disliked this Shi Shuai. Teacher Yi was also startled. How could they start quarreling in the middle of the relay race? Shi Shuai rolled up his sleeves. Shi Shuai am not scared. When the 10 of us pass the baton, the total time is counted, but we can see the results of each person's relay. I'll definitely run faster than him. Shi Shuai pointed at Wang Ling. Look at this bro, he's so thin. One look, and you can tell he's malnourished. The result of eating cheap snacks every day. Like those are seriously unhealthy. On the rostrum, Old Antique suddenly felt a little stabbed in the heart. What was wrong with spicy strips? Did the spicy strips provoke you? A regular limited edition spicy strip was also very expensive. Be careful. On the side, Fang Xing's expression instantly turned cold. Shi Shuai couldn't help but mutter. Let's see who will make a fool of themselves in the end. Wang Ling still didn't say anything, but the expression on his face was clearly a lot gloomier than before. He glanced at Shi Shuai. At that moment, silence spoke louder than words. Although Wang Ling hadn't said a word, everyone's spines involuntarily twitched as they quivered. There is a kind of cold feeling. It was as if someone was glaring at him with murderous intent. From the rostrum, Audiobook had seen it very clearly. It was as if the whole school had been hit by a ghost. Headmaster Chen looked at the sky and couldn't help but rub his hands. What kind of weather is this? Why did the temperature drop so suddenly? Holy shit, what was going on? He was clearly a white-cut chicken that looked so weak that it could not even withstand a gust of wind. Why did that glance give him goosebumps? Shi Shuai couldn't figure it out no matter how he thought about it. Fang Xing didn't say a word, and just sighed with a faint smile as he patted classmate Shi Shuai on the shoulder. You're on your own. Shi Shuai was baffled by this reminder. Only Fang Xing and Audiobook knew that from the moment this classmate Shi Shuai had dissed crispy noodle snacks, he was already dead. Everyone stood on the track as the 10,000-meter relay officially began, and Shi Shuai happened to be the first runner. As he spoke, the referee raised his starting pistol. Everyone take your places. Shui had already taken control of the heavy black steel sword, allowing it to float above his head. This sword was a lot heavier than the spirit swords he usually used for practice, and Shui couldn't help gritting his teeth. F***K. But now that things had come to this, he already had no way out. Since he had boasted just now, no matter what, he had to give it his all. At the very least, he couldn't lose to that white-cut chicken just now. Bang! A gunshot rang out. The robust student sure took a big stride forward like an arrow and dashed forward like a flying arrow. The black steel sword hovered steadily above his head and sprinted along with him. But it was very clear that because the black steel sword was too heavy, Shui's speed wasn't up to his expectations. With just half a lap to go, he was already drenched in sweat. Shui's previous top speed had been 33 meters per minute, and he had run 1 kilometer in a little over 30 seconds. Very quickly, Shui handed over the baton. Super Chun was the second runner. After that, he rushed out on his sword at the speed of light, while Shui couldn't help panting with his hands on his knees. He raised his head and looked at the results on the electronic panel next to him. 5:50 seconds. How could this be, right? It had to be that the black steel sword was too heavy. Since he only had 50 seconds, then the others definitely didn't have good results. Especially that white-cut chicken. Shui glared at him fiercely. He completely ignored him. Very quickly, Super Chun came back with his sword and handed over the third runner to a boy from class 2. Unlike Shui, Super Chun felt that this black steel sword wasn't as heavy as he had imagined. When he took over the baton, he didn't even break a sweat. At that moment, everyone's eyes were focused on the electronic panel. After the referee confirmed it, Super Chun's result was directly announced. 29 seconds. What the hell? How did he do it in 29 seconds? What the hell? How did I do it in 29 seconds? Super Chun and Shui were both stupefied. Extraordinary performance, Super Chun. Teacher Yi was overjoyed and patted Super Chun on the shoulder like crazy. He couldn't help hugging him. Only Fang Xing stood silently on the side and smiled as if he had seen through everything. Classmate Wang Ling, can you help me out later? Wang Ling. Fang Xing knew that it had to be Wang Ling who had done something. That was why Super Chun had been able to finish the race so easily. Otherwise, no matter how extraordinary Super Chun's performance was, there was no way he could have run in such a heaven-defying time of 29 seconds. It was really too easy for Wang Ling to pull off a minor trick in a competition of this level. Fang Xing was the fourth runner, and he was standing in front of Wang Ling, who was in charge of the fifth. The third runner was actually average, and Shui was sure that no matter how bad he was, he would definitely be a lot faster than this person. When the third runner handed over the baton, all the teachers and students in the school almost subconsciously turned to the electronic panel in the field. The referee announced the result. 35 seconds. Everyone cried out in surprise. Shui. It was very obvious that Wang Ling had also cast a minor spell on this boy to lighten his body. However, the 50 seconds Shui had run just now were in fact Shui's true result. Wang Ling hadn't done anything to it. After all, the school's honor was at stake in the sports meet's results, and Wang Ling felt that it wasn't worth it to deliberately cast a negative spell to trip Shui up. At worst, he wouldn't help him. Wang Ling understood that as long as he helped other people improve their results, in the end, Shui would still be the one making a fool of himself. If he didn't teach this kind of contrarian a lesson. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.